Hey guys, tonight we begin not with thunder or kings or great wars, but with the sound of wind warm and soft, slipping through the cracks of a carved wooden window. You're lying on a low bed draped in mosquito netting, somewhere along the Swahili coast, 500 years ago. The stone beneath you is cool. The breeze smells faintly of salt, coconut smoke, and something a little bit fermented. Not unpleasant, just different. Like the kind of smell you don't notice until it's gone. Outside, a gecko makes a polite chirping noise, reminding you you're not alone. This isn't a Europe of woolen sleeves and plagues, nor the China of porcelain and poems, though threads from both worlds do pass through here. This is a coast built on trade, coral, and long conversations under moonlight. You probably wouldn't survive this place in real life. The mango wine might confuse your stomach, and the sun would confuse your complexion, but let's pretend. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And you step outside barefoot. The stone is uneven but familiar, warm from the late sun. Your clothes are light cotton, dyed with indigo and smelling faintly of limes from last week's spill, probably. You adjust your waistband and glance at the ocean. You can't see it from here, but the breeze has changed. It's the kind that only comes from water. Wide, wet, full of stories. This is the town of Mombasa, or maybe Kilwa, or Lamu. It doesn't really matter, they're sisters, these cities. Coral stone walls, curved archways, roofs made of mangrove poles and crushed shells. Towns that have been washed, sunburned, and rebuilt more times than anyone can count. It's sometime in the 14th or 15th century. The Portuguese haven't shown up yet, or maybe they've just left, confused by the good manners and better coffee. Time is flexible here, and so are the facts. You pass by a narrow doorway, so low you have to duck. Inside, someone is grinding cloves in a stone bowl the size of a watermelon. The smell is sharp and sweet. There's a hum in the air. Not of machines, there are none but of people. You hear 3 languages within 10 steps. Swahili, of course, the smooth, rhythmic blend of Bantu bass and Arabic overlay, with occasional Portuguese stowaways. Someone greets you with "Salaama." Another laughs and says something in Gujarati. You nod politely and keep walking, pretending to understand. The truth is, this coast is confusing. Historians don't always agree on when things arrived here or from where. Some argue the settlements were founded by Arab traders who intermarried with locals. Others insist they were African cities from the start, simply enriched by outside trade. Some stories claim Persian princes were shipwrecked and charmed the locals with silk and song. The archaeological layers disagree with each other, but the streets don't care. They just curve unexpectedly, as if shaped by poetry or goats. You walk past a courtyard shaded by papaya trees. A group of women sit on woven mats, pounding millet with wide, graceful strokes. They're chatting, but it's unclear if it's about politics or papayas. Probably both. One of them lifts her chin and gestures toward your feet. You look down. You've stepped on a crab. It's okay, the crab is fine. It gives you a look that says, "Watch it," then scuttles away indignantly, as if it has a meeting to attend. You apologize aloud. The women laugh. Later, you pass a small shop, if you can call it that. It's more of a niche in a wall, draped with blue fabric and stacked with strange, wonderful things. Ivory combs, brass nose rings, tiny clay pots shaped like pomegranates. The merchant, a man with an astonishing beard and only one shoe, waves at you lazily. You pause, fascinated by a curved blade with gold inlay. "Yemeni," he says. Then, seeing your interest, "No, wait, maybe Omani, or from the Comoros." He shrugs. "It came in on a dough." That's what matters. You nod, as if that clears everything up. You reach the edge of town. There, the ocean stretches out, flat and glowing. The sun's gone now, but the sky still holds on to lavender. The water laps against the quay in soft rhythms, like a cat snoring. Far out, you see a triangle of white sail, a doe, slow and sure, heading toward the coast. Maybe it's bringing silk, or sugar, or letters. You sit on the coral steps and watch. Somewhere behind you, someone begins to sing a tune that could be a lullaby or a warning, depending on how you hear it. It has no words you recognize, but you find yourself humming along. A child walks by with a lantern made from a coconut shell. Inside, a candle flickers. The holes in the shell throw tiny moons and stars across the ground as they pass. As you breathe in, you realize the air has shifted again. Now it carries something floral frangipani, maybe, and the earthy tang of wet rope and salt. You close your eyes and let the breeze rock you, gently like the hull of a trading boat. The Swahili coast doesn't sleep, but it knows how to rest. And tonight, so do you. You wake with the sound of sand being swept, not with a broom, but with a bundle of dried palm leaves tied at one end, swishing gently in rhythmic strokes. A woman in a yellow wrap is sweeping the alleyway, not because it's dirty, but because it's morning. That's how you start the day here, by brushing away the night. Your feet meet the coral stone steps with a soft crunch. Not sharp, the coral's been walked smooth over generations. You wiggle your toes a bit. It's not like walking on cement. It's like walking on the memory of the sea. These stones are made from reef skeletons, pulled from the shallow waters just offshore. They're light, porous, and strangely warm even in the morning. Some say you can still hear the ocean in them if you press your ear close. You try it. You don't hear the sea exactly, but you do hear footsteps not yours. Someone else is walking nearby, their sandals tapping in a quick, familiar rhythm. It's an old man in a long indigo robe. His head is shaved, but his beard is wild. He's holding a scroll and a fish. He nods at you and raises the fish slightly, as if to say, "Important business." You nod back. The fish blinks. Everyone moves on. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance, or closer. Hard to tell with these narrow walls. The streets here don't follow maps. They curve like vines. No sharp corners, just gentle confusion. That's on purpose. Some say the cities of the Swahili coast were designed to breathe like lungs, narrow corridors that funnel sea breezes inward, cooling the coral walls and lifting the smell of boiling cassava before it can settle too deeply into your clothes. You pass a high doorway framed in wood. The door is massive and studded with brass. This isn't for decoration, though it is beautiful. It's a statement. These doors are famous, carved with geometric patterns, sometimes stars, sometimes flowers, and sometimes just keyholes that no one has the key for anymore. Behind it lives a merchant. You don't know his name, but you know his house by scent. Cinnamon, lemon peel, damp linen, and goats. Always at least 2 goats in the courtyard, you're told. For luck, your stomach growls. A woman in a rust-colored scarf waves you over. She's ladling something from a pot over coals. It bubbles like porridge, but smells like cloves and fermented coconut. She hands you a bowl made from a halved gourd. Uji, she says, a millet porridge, lightly sour. She adds a drizzle of tamarind and something crunchy on top. You try not to ask questions. It's delicious. As you eat, a boy walks by with a basket of tiny shells. Cowries. He's counting them aloud. Kumi na moja, kumi na mbili, 11, 12. And you realize he's not just playing. He's doing math. Cowries are currency here. Not official, but respected. Lighter than coins, smoother than trade ledgers. You trade a few to the boy for a dried mango and a toothy grin. Then a woman in a green wrap asks you, "Did you hear the debate last night?" You blink. "The poetry debate," she says, "at Bwana Azma's house. 5 verses in, and his sister roasted him about his lack of metaphor. Brutal. You wish you had been there." In Swahili towns, poetry isn't just a luxury. It's part of civic life. A merchant might woo a buyer with a verse about the smoothness of his imported silk. A bride's family might vet a groom by his ability to rhyme moonlight with obligation. You repeat a line you overheard once. Usiku, haunam ji'ila anam lango. Night has no city, but it has a door. You're not sure what it means, but it sounds wise. As you turn the corner, you nearly trip over a basket of dates. A child giggles from behind the wall. They knew you would. It's a game, apparently date ambushes. You toss one of the dates back. A small thwack and another laugh. Fair trade. There's something comfortable here. Not just the warmth, but the texture of the place. The coral walls aren't smooth. They ripple slightly, carved by hand, weathered by centuries of wind. They catch the morning sun at odd angles, throwing soft golden shadows across your face. You touch one wall as you pass. It's damp with dew and rough as pumice. A passing cat looks at you with judgment. You look back, apologetically. In a nearby window, a woman is brushing her daughter's hair. The girl winces. The mother sighs. You don't need to understand the words, the tone is eternal. Hold still. The girl stares at you while chewing a stick of sugarcane, then sticks out her tongue, then grins, then disappears. You laugh, quietly. So does the breeze. Further down, you reach a place where the coral street opens into a small square, maybe 10 paces wide. There's a bench carved from a whale rib. On it sits an old man sharpening a knife with a piece of sea glass. Want to hear a secret? He says, without looking up. You do. He leans in. There are tunnels beneath this town. Real ones. The traders use them to move gold, or escape marriages, or both. He smiles. The knife flashes. The glass gleams. Then he waves you away with a wink. Whether it's true or not, you're not sure. But the ground beneath your feet does feel slightly hollow. You walk on. And as you go, your footsteps echo softly, not loudly, but just enough to remind you this town remembers things. Not through statues, not through scrolls, but through stone that was once alive. And now, so are you. You follow the breeze, or maybe your nose, until the streets swell into a wide, sun-warmed market. There's no grand gate announcing its start. It just happens. One moment, it's alleyways and coral walls. The next, you're shoulder to shoulder with merchants shouting greetings and customers arguing cheerfully over baskets of mangoes. And the smell hits you. Not of sweat or livestock, though, that's there too, in the background, but cinnamon. Sharp, sweet, and spicy. A cloud of it hovers in the air like invisible gold dust. It clings to your sleeves. It gets into your eyelashes. It's in everything because someone, somewhere, is roasting something sticky with honey and spice, and they aren't telling anyone what's in it. You weave between woven mats laid directly on the ground. Each one holds treasures or trash, depending on your taste. There's Chinese porcelain with little blue fish on it, frayed rope, a single sandal, sacks of cardamom, a bolt of indigo cloth so vibrant you squint at it. A merchant in a yellow robe leans over his stall and tries to sell you a dried seahorse. Good luck, he whispers, or good soup. It's unclear which. You don't buy it, but you do pick up a copper spoon shaped like a fishtail. The merchant grins like he's just tricked you into a lifelong commitment. Maybe he has. There's a woman selling rose water in stoppered gourds. She spritzes your wrist with it, no charge, and gives a small nod as if to say, now you're part of the coast. You sniff your wrist. You smell like a well-dressed fruit salad. Children run through the crowd playing tag with palm fronds. One of them wears a necklace made entirely of dried tamarind pods. Another has a single earring, a Chinese coin, with a square hole in the middle. It swings when he laughs. You glance up. A monkey is watching you from the rooftop. It's chewing on something, possibly a prayer scroll, possibly a mango. Either way, it looks smug. In one corner of the market, there's a commotion around a man holding a bird cage. Inside is a parrot. The bird squawks, Bismillah, and then surprisingly, you smell like garlic. which causes half the crowd to howl with laughter. The man shrugs. It's Persian. It's learning. You move on quickly. You did have garlic for breakfast. At another stall, an elderly man carefully unwraps something from a length of waxed cloth. It's a glass bottle, blue-green, bulbous, with tiny bubbles in the surface. Venetian, he says softly, like he's talking about a ghost. You ask him how it got here. He smiles, not at you, but at the bottle. By wave, by wind, by wedding gift. Who knows? He lets you hold it. It's cool and heavier than it looks. And chipped. Because history is like that. Nearby, someone is grinding something in a huge stone basin. You recognize it instantly. Cloves. The smell rises like smoke. It's sharp enough to make your eyes water. A scholar once called this coast the scent cellar of the world. You understand now. Cloves from Madagascar, cardamom from the hills inland, cinnamon from Sri Lanka, and sandalwood from somewhere no one will name. They all pass through here, often more than once. And it's not just trade. These spices get wrapped into stories. One man insists that cloves cure heartbreak. Another swears that cinnamon bark soaked in coconut milk will make your dreams clearer. A third believes sandalwood attracts cats, but only if you're sad. You don't know what to believe. So you just breathe it in and feel oddly comforted. A boy walks by, carrying a tray of small pastries. He offers you one. It's shaped like a crescent and dusted with something white. You bite in. It's a lot of flavors. Sweet, salty, a bit of pepper, and something that might be fish. The boy grins. Wedding treat, he says, and disappears into the crowd. You wonder if you were just married to someone by accident. You keep walking. Then, you stumble across a stall full of teeth. Not human. At least, you hope not. Shark teeth. Elephant molars. Something labeled Jin Fang. Maybe. The merchant watches you with one eye and no expression. You nod politely and back away, pretending to be deeply interested in a nearby stall of sandals. The sandals are made from fish skin. You keep moving. At the far edge of the market, near where the scent of cinnamon gives way to the smell of drying nets, you find a quiet corner. Just a blanket on the ground and 3 small pots. The woman there is not shouting. She doesn't call to you. She just waits. You sit. She nods. She opens one pot. Inside, pearls. Not perfect, but real. Another, carved dice made of coral. The third, inkstones black, square, heavy. You ask what she sells. She looks you over. Memories, she says, then adds, and sometimes receipts. You buy a coral die, not because you need it, but because it feels like it once knew someone. You lean back on a barrel and watch the tide come in slowly, bringing with it boats that weren't there this morning. Dhow sails unfurled. Men shout greetings in 3 languages. A woman balances a basket on her head with the grace of a poem. A donkey sneezes. A monkey steals a date. Everything smells like cinnamon again. And for a brief, impossible moment, you feel like the market was waiting just for you. You've barely left the cinnamon-scented market behind when you hear the voice. It cuts through the soft clatter of hooves and sandals like a trumpet made of honey. Tall animals? Rare animals? Diplomacy on 4 legs? You turn. There, in the center of the square, surrounded by a small crowd of amused skeptics, stands a man in an embroidered robe far too warm for the weather. He's sweating. He's proud. He's holding a carved staff topped with, is that a giraffe head? Yes, he says, as if hearing your thoughts. A giraffe, a real one. Gone now, of course. But once, oh, once it bowed before an emperor. The crowd murmurs. You stay. Because who wouldn't? The man introduces himself as Bwana Makarafu, which you strongly suspect is not his real name. He says he once escorted a giraffe from the Swahili coast all the way to the court of the Ming Emperor in China. Twice, he adds. The first one didn't like the boat. He explains that giraffes were the height of diplomatic gifting in the 15th century, majestic, strange, elegant. The Chinese called them qilin, mythical beasts said to walk so softly they didn't bend grass. The emperor believed he was being sent a divine omen. In reality, Makarafu admits, it ate a hat. He gestures to a large illustrated scroll laid out on the ground. It shows a slightly exaggerated giraffe taller than a building being paraded through a Chinese palace, while musicians throw flower petals. A child asks, "What happened to it?" The man pauses. "It was given its own room," he says carefully, "and a lot of apples." You suspect that's not the full story. This tale isn't entirely invented, you realize. It echoes a real event. Around 1414, a giraffe was indeed sent from the Swahili coast, most likely, from the city of Malindi to China, by way of Bengal. The giraffe arrived in Nanjing, and was received as an auspicious symbol by the Yongle emperor. Historians still debate the logistics. Some argue the giraffe was actually acquired through Arab intermediaries, not Swahili ones. Others think the animal came from further south, Mozambique perhaps. No one can quite agree how they kept it fed, or calm, or upright on a ship. And no one talks about the smell. You follow Makarafu to a shaded booth draped in yellow cloth. On the table, small carved animals. Giraffes, yes, but also rhinos, cranes, and one creature that looks like a confused goat with wings. That's a metaphor, he explains solemnly. He offers to sell you a giraffe carving for 5 cowries, a poem, or a piece of your lunch. You give him half a dried banana. He gives you a giraffe with a chipped horn. Character, he says. As you examine the tiny sculpture, Makarafu tells another story. Once, long ago, a giraffe sneezed on a sultan. And that, he says, was how the clove tax began. No one believes him. Everyone laughs anyway, including you. A donkey passes, dragging a cart of sugarcane. The cart wheels squeak in rhythm with a tune someone nearby is humming. A merchant yells at a parrot. 2 children fight over a shell bracelet, then forget what they were fighting about. And Makarafu lowers his voice. There are records, he says, old ones, ledgers in Arabic, Portuguese scribbles, even Chinese brushwork. All mention giraffes, all differ. He shrugs. History is like trading. Everyone inflates the price. You ask him why giraffes? He looks at you for a long moment. Because they see farther, he says softly. Their hearts are high up. They dream from altitude. You think that might be the most beautiful nonsense you've ever heard. Or maybe it's true. The sun has moved west. The shade is longer. Makarafu is now telling a different group of listeners that a giraffe once danced for a prince in Persia. It did not go well. He mistook it for a demon, Makarafu says with regret. Threw a pomegranate at it. You let the crowd absorb that one. You walk away, giraffe carving in hand, unsure whether you've just been sold a trinket, a story, or a version of history that makes more sense than the textbooks. Possibly all 3. And as you turn the corner, you pass a mural painted on a crumbling wall, faded but still visible. A tall, long-necked creature surrounded by clouds and waves. A line of script below it reads in Arabic script, but Swahili tongue, "He who brings wonder, brings luck." You smile. Your tiny giraffe nods in your pocket. Or maybe, that's just the breeze. The alley grows quiet again, and you follow the sound of something soft, not music, not speech, but the steady scrape of fingers across cloth. You find her sitting cross-legged under a woven reed awning, surrounded by loops of thread in colors too vivid to be natural, indigo, as deep as the ocean's shadow, saffron brighter than noon, and a pale pink that seems impossible for this century. She's not weaving cloth. She's weaving lines. Thin strips of cotton are stretched between her knees and a carved wooden frame, and across them she knots phrases in red thread. Swahili, mostly. Some Arabic, a little Portuguese, and the occasional wandering Chinese character, stitched sideways. Her fingers move like they've never known doubt. You ask what she's making. Kanga, she says, nodding to the cloth. But not the kind you wear, the kind you read. You've seen kangas before, patterned cotton wraps worn around waists or heads, printed with bright images, and always a proverb stitched across the bottom. But this is slower, more deliberate, hand-stitched, and poetic. It's for someone's kitchen, she explains. They asked for something that sounds like forgiveness but works like pepper. You raise an eyebrow. She grins. The line she's embroidering reads, "Don't salt my rice and call it rain." You laugh. She nods. "He cheated," she adds. The woman introduces herself as Rahima. She offers you a stool made from an overturned mortar and slides a plate of pickled mango slices toward you. They taste like vinegar and mischief. She asks you to hold a thread spool steady while she works. You do. And as she knots and loops and pulls, she tells you stories, or maybe just sentences that seem to bloom sideways into truths. Every wedding here has at least one whispered poem, she says. Not spoken aloud. Sewn into the bride's cloth. A warning or a promise. You ask what hers said. Rima smirks. It said, "Don't think because I'm quiet, I don't remember your mother's tone." You try not to choke on the mango. Textile scholars still argue over the origins of the kanga. Some say it began with Portuguese handkerchiefs sold by Indian merchants. Others insist it was born from East African women repurposing scraps of printed cloth, turning colonial leftovers into cultural gold. The truth, like most things here, is braided. All you know is that Rahima is threading a poem about wind into the hem of a tablecloth, and it makes more sense than any political treaty you've ever read. She reaches behind her and pulls out a roll of cloth printed with tiny red shoes. "Funeral cloth," she explains. You hesitate. She nods. For a child, his aunt asks for something joyful, something with motion. You realize the shoes are dancing, and your throat goes tight. In another pile, she shows you cloth with pineapples, chickens, a bowl of rice, and confusingly, a fork with legs. "That one's a metaphor," she says again deadpan. You don't ask. She points to one that's half finished. The phrase reads, "My silence is not your victory." That one's for a sultan's third wife, Rahima adds. She wanted something discreet. You blink. She shrugs. It'll hang in the pantry. The stitching continues. The threads stretch and pull, tangle briefly, then smooth out again. At one point, she pricks her finger. A single drop of blood lands on the cloth. She dabs it gently with her scarf and whispers something under her breath, a blessing. Or maybe just a complaint. She tells you the best thread is soaked in clove water before weaving. It keeps the ants away and adds a scent you'll never fully scrub from your fingers. You smell her fingertips. They smell like spice and secrets. You ask her if she's ever stitched something untrue. Rahima pauses. Her hands stop. The breeze shifts. "Once," she says, "a line for a husband who didn't deserve it." What did it say? She frowns. "You are my morning light." She spits to the side. Never again. The sun leans low. Her daughter arrives, maybe 7 years old, carrying a basket of broken thread ends and a goat that seems completely uninterested in poetry. She sits beside Rahima and begins sorting the threads by color, humming softly. The goat tries to eat your sandal. Rahima doesn't scold either of them. She just keeps sewing. Before you leave, she offers you a small cloth square no larger than your palm. The design is simple, a spiral of green leaves around a single word stitched in black. Subira. You don't know what it means. She smiles. It means, wait. You nod. You fold the cloth into your pocket. It smells faintly of cloves, and it feels exactly like something you didn't know you needed. You don't plan to find the tavern, but the scent finds you. Warm banana, a hint of yeast, and something smoky, like sugar left too long in the pan. You follow it down a narrow passage behind a spice stall and emerge into a shady courtyard with uneven flagstones, moss between the cracks, and 3 goats who look like they've been here longer than the wall itself. This is not a tavern in the European sense, no tankards, no barmaids, no songs about ships. It's more like someone's living room that got quietly taken over by tired traders and loose conversation. You sit on a low stool made from half a dhow hull. A man with long earlobes and a cheerful limp hands you a wooden cup. It's warm, murky, frothy, banana wine. On the house, he says, then adds, but the cup costs extra if you chew it. You nod solemnly. You won't chew the cup. You sip. It's sour, then sweet, then warm in your chest. You're not sure if it's good, but you are sure it's working. The man introduces himself as Yusuf, and he seems to run the place, or maybe just occupy it most convincingly. Coins clink as he sits down beside you. He's counting them into small piles, arranging them not by value, but by origin. You see coins from everywhere. Smooth silver from Gujarat, bronze with a lion on it, maybe from Hormuz, tiny brass tokens shaped like fishhooks, probably local, and one so thin and delicate it looks like it was poured from tea. That one's Chinese, Yusuf says, tapping it. They punch holes in the middle, hang them like beads. He threads it onto a string and ties it around his ankle. For balance, he adds. Spiritual or physical? I forget. A woman arrives, balancing a tray on her head. On it, smoked fish, cut limes, tiny dried chilies, and something that looks like it might have once been a cricket. She doesn't stop walking, just passes through, leaving the tray behind. Yusuf pops a chili into his mouth like it's a raisin. He does not flinch. You try one. You regret everything. You ask if this is a regular drinking spot. Yusuf gestures vaguely at the courtyard. Depends what you're drinking. And what you're escaping. Oh. He grins. You think you like him. He pulls a small pouch from his sash and spills its contents onto the table. More coins, but also beads. Some of glass, some of stone. One looks like a carved olive pit. You point at it. That one bought me a book, Yusuf says. Or maybe a camel. Hard to say. Either way, I lost both. He doesn't seem upset. A short man with an enormous hat joins the table. His accent is impossible to place. He holds out a coin that glows like copper but hums like something older. Yusuf sniffs it. Fake, he says, then takes a long sip of banana wine. But convincing. I'd still take it. You ask if they use coin scales here. The man with the hat laughs. Scales? Eyes. A good trader knows weight from sound. A better one knows value from story. Oh, Yusuf adds. The best ones just nod confidently and walk away with the whole basket. You believe them. Someone starts playing a thumb piano in the corner. The notes are light, curious, like rain trying to ask a question. The goats do not react. A large woman in a red sash stands to make a toast. 2 giraffes, she shouts. Everyone cheers. You're not sure why, but by now you've accepted that giraffes are something of a local theme. You sip more. The banana wine is evolving. Yusuf leans in. Want to hear a secret? Of course you do. He points to a small, locked chest under the table. Full of impossible coins, he whispers. Ones that don't match any empire. Some made of pearl. One, I think, made of dried fish skin. No one can tell where they came from. They just show up in the port sometimes. You ask what he does with them. I keep them, he says, for the end of the world, or a very good bet. You ask if anyone's ever forged coins here. Yusuf frowns. Yes, often. But forging stories is harder. That's where most people get caught. He taps one of the coins with a chipped edge. This one came from a man who claimed he'd bartered it for a storm. I liked the lie. So, I let it pass. He tosses it to you. You turn it over. The symbol on it looks like a cat wearing a crown. Probably fake. Feels real. More people drift into the courtyard. A woman with jasmine in her hair. A man carrying a flute made of bone. A child selling roasted ants on a stick. Each brings coins, gossip, stories, or all three. No one asks your name, But someone hands you another cup. You've stopped asking what's in it. It doesn't matter anymore. The sun has dropped below the wall, and lanterns begin to flicker to life. Not all at once, just gently, lazily, like the town is thinking about maybe becoming evening. Yusuf is humming a song about salt, or memory, or both. And you sit back, the banana wine warm in your chest, the coins clinking in rhythm with your heartbeat, and the soft sea breeze winding through the stones. You feel for a moment like you're part of the current, something fluid, ancient, slightly fermented. Someone nearby says, "Trade is just conversation with better snacks." You nod. You close your eyes. And you smile. Before you ever knew what hunger was, you knew the smell of baking bread, barley and smoke, ash and hands. Your mother's hands, to be exact, knotted with years, powdered with flour, and always warm, even in the cool mornings of flood season. She used to say, "The bread listens when you're angry," so she kneaded in silence. Now that she's gone, you try to remember how she folded the dough. Not just the method, but the rhythm. Turn, press, stretch, whisper. Not a recipe, more like a ceremony. You pull the cloth from the bowl. The dough has risen again, puffed slightly from the heat of the hearth and the sour memory of last night's leaven. You smell it. It's alive in a way nothing else in the house is. A little wild, a little patient. Your sister brings the flat paddle. It's been passed down through 4 women, each one carving her name into the handle, like a soft boast. You don't add oil. Oil is for nobles and weddings. You dust your hands with ashes from burned palm fronds, an old trick to keep the dough from sticking. You shape the cake slowly, palm-sized, thumb-thick, dimpled at the center. In wealthier houses, breakfast bread might be filled with dates, goat cheese, even roasted chickpeas. There's even debate among scholars whether the rich sometimes used honey in the dough, not just on it. You, however, make do with what you have: flour, water, salt, and a quiet sense of purpose. Bread is not a luxury. Bread is breath. Bread is what comes first, before anything else can happen in the day. You remember your mother humming as she worked. Not a temple hymn, not a prayer, just an old village tune, half nonsense, half warning. If the bread cracks, someone lies. If it burns, someone's hiding. If it's hollow, someone is leaving. She used to sing it when she thought no one was listening. You hum it now, under your breath, as you lay the cakes on a cracked ceramic tray and slide them toward the hot wall of the hearth oven. The oven hisses a little. The dough begins to blister almost instantly. The smell hits you like a memory. Earthy, nutty, slightly bitter. You don't move. You just watch. In modern books, the process of making this bread is often reduced to a sentence. But it is not fast. It is not neat. Your arms ache from grinding the flour. Your back twinges from the squatting. Your fingers sting from touching too close coals. And yet, there is something sacred in this repetition. Not religious, ancestral. While the bread cooks, you prepare the dipping bowl. You take a pinch of salt from the dried gourd jar, a splash of oil from the last of the pressed stash, and a dash of crushed coriander seeds your aunt smuggled back from a trip down river. It's not fancy, but the scent, that sweet citrusy sharpness, makes your mouth water anyway. Your sister returns with a surprise: half a boiled egg from a neighbor. She found it while bartering a broken comb for new linen thread. She grins like it's gold. You laugh softly and nod in approval. The bread is done. You pull it out with a folded palm leaf. The underside is dark and spotted with ash. The top is cracked like old river mud. You place it on a flat reed mat and fan it gently, cooling it just enough to not burn your fingers, but not enough to dull the scent. You tear a piece and dip it into the salt oil. The flavor is as it always is: dry, chewy, faintly sour, and yet exactly what you needed. Your sister tears her piece more carefully. She lays her half of the egg on top like it's a crown. For a brief moment, you both eat in silence. Outside, the street noise is growing. Inside, the hearth still glows. The bread is warm. The house smells like memory. And your mother, though gone, is somehow still here. In the flour, the cloth, the silence between bites. You wake not with a start, but with a sigh. Your body remembers the stone smooth from centuries of feet, slightly damp from morning air, still clinging to the scent of last night's banana, wine, and jasmine. You stretch. A cat stretches with you. You're not sure if it's yours. You wander back into the city, past doorways with wooden lintels carved like lace, past walls whose plaster peels like old parchment, past a man washing his feet in a carved basin. And then you see it, a pale tower rising above the coral rooftops, round, not pointed, modest, but watching. A minaret. It doesn't shout. It waits. The call to prayer is not broadcast through speakers, it's sung. A voice, smooth and unhurried, spills from the tower's mouth like honey across hot bread. It wraps around walls. It settles on window ledges. It echoes off seashell mortar. You follow it. The mosque sits within a compound framed by coral and mango trees. No domes, no dramatic arches, just calm geometry and stones softened by weather and time. You remove your sandals, tuck them into a wooden slot, and step inside. It is cool, quieter than a whisper. You feel as though you've entered someone's memory. The floor is stone-worn smooth from knees, not shoes. The pillars are coral carved, not by masons, but by millennia under the sea. They are not uniform. Some are cracked. One tilts slightly, as if it leaned too far into a story once and never recovered. And above, wooden beams stretch across the ceiling like ribs. They're made of mangrove. The locals say mangrove doesn't rot, because it already knows the sea. You sit at the edge of the space. Not because you're devout, though maybe you are, in this moment, but because it feels wrong to pass through without pausing. A boy walks past you carrying a basket of sandals. One pair is too large. One is missing its heel. All of them are dusty. He hums a tune with no words. The echo in the room carries it forward like a prayer no one wrote down. You think, maybe that's the point. A man near the front is reciting under his breath, not loudly, just moving his lips in rhythm. You don't understand the language Arabic, most likely, but you do understand the feeling. Not performance, presence. He pauses to scratch his ear. He's human, not holy. That comforts you. There's a niche carved into the Qibla wall, pointing toward Mecca. No ornament, just a curve in the stone, like a pause made visible. On either side, there are small carved rosettes, not perfect circles, more like starfish, or flowers trying to be stars. You reach out to trace one. You stop yourself. Some silences shouldn't be touched. You learn from a passing worshiper, an old man with sandals tied by string, that this mosque is over 700 years old. No one agrees on who built it. Some say it was a group of Yemeni sailors who stayed after a storm. Others say it was funded by a local merchant woman who wanted to build something that outlasted her perfume business. Both versions sound plausible. Both are probably true. He points to a set of narrow windows. They let the wind in, he says, but not the dust. You look closer. The windows are covered by lattice screens, mashrabiyah, made from carved wood in delicate patterns. Some are circles, some are hexagons. One looks like a fish swallowing the moon. You ask if they mean anything. The man shrugs. Meanings are for later. First, they are shadows. You nod, as if that makes sense. And somehow, it does. Another visitor passes by a young woman with a headscarf in bright indigo. She's carrying a clay jug of water, which she pours gently over a hand-washing basin near the entrance. You ask why. She smiles. So the stone remembers kindness. Then she leaves. You notice a shelf near the wall, filled with books. Not many, just enough. The spines are leather. The ink smells faintly of clove and sea. One book has no writing on the spine, just a spiral. You don't open it. Not everything is for opening. Before you leave, you see a boy sweeping the floor with a bundle of reeds. He's not in a hurry. He stops often to chase small lizards from the corners. He sees you watching and says, "They listen, you know." You ask, "The lizards?" He nods. "To the prayers?" "No," he says. "To the shoes." Then he giggles and goes back to sweeping. You believe him. Outside, the air is brighter now. The ocean's breath moves through the mango trees, lifting the leaves into applause. You feel different. Not cleaner, not holier, just steadier. Like a coral pillar, quietly holding up something bigger than yourself. You wander with no direction, which is exactly how the best things are found here. The sun is slipping toward its nap again, and the narrow streets cast longer shadows. The breeze has picked up just slightly enough to stir your scarf and carry the scent of limes, stone dust, and wet ink. Then you see the wall. At first it looks like any other coral stone, patched with lime plaster, sun-washed and cracked in places. But the more you look, the more you realize. It's talking. Not aloud, not in letters, in carvings. The entire surface is covered in shallow reliefs, chiseled images fading into one another like a dream caught in plaster. You move closer. There's a lion chasing a doe. There's a fish with wings. There's a date palm that seems to turn into a woman holding a water jug. And in the middle, a shape like a spiral sun, carved with astonishing care, every ray tipped with what looks like cloves. You touch one. It's warm from the sun. It smells faintly of chalk and cinnamon. You're not the first to press your fingers here. The grooves are worn smooth by centuries of idle curiosity and perhaps reverence. A boy on a step nearby looks up from his string game. "You're reading it wrong," he says. You blink. "It's not a story in pictures," he continues, standing. "It's a story in order." He leads you along the wall, from left to right, tracing each panel with his finger. First, the boat leaves. Then the lion warns them. Then the fish guides them. Then the woman feeds them. You ask, "And the sun?" He shrugs. "That's just how it ends, or begins." And then he runs off, string trailing behind him like a ribbon of meaning. You sit on a low bench facing the wall. You watch it the way you'd watch a bonfire. Not for detail, for drift. Scholars argue about walls like this. Some claim they're just decorative folk art, they say. Others insist they were a form of silent instruction, a kind of public poem in stone. A few even believe they held spiritual power, as if the carvings were meant to trap wind, or turn away envy, or store the memory of prayers. There's a local story, Rahima might have told it, about a girl who carved her own story into a garden wall. When her husband read it, he wept for 3 days, and built her a kitchen that faced the sea. You hope that part's true. Next to the main wall, you notice a lower section, more damaged. You crouch. There, half buried in shadow, is a tiny carving of a goat wearing a crown. You grin. A familiar motif. A man with a sun-creased face and a string of beads around his neck pauses beside you. "She told me to carve that," he says. You look up. He smiles. "My wife said if I didn't make her queen of the goats, she'd tell my mother what I actually traded for her dowry." You ask, "What did you trade?" He laughs. 2 bolts of cloth, 1 basket of dried mango, and a poem I borrowed from someone else." He pats the wall. She liked the poem, though. As you walk the length of the wall again, you notice the imperfections, chipped corners, lines that wander, unfinished animals. 1 bird only has half a wing. 1 palm tree curls sideways like it changed its mind. It doesn't feel broken. It feels alive, like a story still being told. At the far end, there's a bench of carved stone, nearly covered in vines. Someone has etched a single phrase into it. Not fancy, not deep, just a few words, scrawled by someone who probably wasn't a mason. Every stone remembers its tide. You don't know what it means, but it feels like something you've always known. As you turn to leave, the sun catches the wall at just the right angle, and for 1 brief moment, just a breath, the carving seemed to move. The lion crouches, The dhow leans into the wind. The fish flicks its tail. The woman lifts her jug, and the clothes in the spiral sun almost sparkle. Then the light shifts, and they become still again. But not silent. Never silent. It starts with drums. Not loud ones, just the kind that thump like a slow heartbeat from somewhere behind a wall. You follow them. The streets are different tonight. Swept clean, hung with strips of cloth and strings of shells that catch the moonlight like fish scales. Someone has scattered petals in the alley, red and orange, the kind that stain your toes if you're not careful. And overhead, hanging from palm fiber cords strung between coral walls, are lanterns. Made of dried moonfish, they shimmer with a soft, translucent glow, as if the fish themselves are still dreaming of the sea. You ask someone what's happening. She adjusts the basket on her head and replies, "Wedding." You ask whose. She shrugs. Everyone's, someone's, doesn't matter, just follow the scent of rosewater. You do. The courtyard is alive with people, some singing, some grinding spices, some adjusting chairs that clearly don't need adjusting. Children dart between legs like eels. Grandmothers are seated like royalty, fanning themselves with woven mats and watching everything. A bride sits in the center of it all, so still she might be carved from ivory. Her headscarf is gold. Her hands are dyed deep red with henna, covered in spirals and suns, and what looks suspiciously like a giraffe in a crown. You approve. Next to her, an old woman chants softly while dabbing something onto the bride's wrists, a mix of frankincense, coconut oil, and crushed basil, you're told. It keeps envy away, someone whispers. Or it just smells nice. Either way, it works. The groom is late. This seems to be part of the ritual. Everyone pretends to be concerned, but no one is truly surprised. A small boy declares that he saw the groom trading his shoes for sea glass, which earns him a peanut and a pat on the head. Eventually, the groom arrives, slightly out of breath, slightly overdressed, holding a wrapped bundle that turns out to be a mango. A large, perfect, slightly ridiculous mango. The bride laughs just once, and softly, and the entire courtyard exhales in relief. The official ceremony is brief. A few words, a nod, an exchange of rings that look suspiciously like repurposed earrings. The groom nearly drops his. Someone in the back shouts, "Start over!" Everyone laughs. Then the food arrives. No plates, just banana leaves and flat stones and fingers. There's rice, steamed in coconut milk and flecked with saffron, grilled fish wrapped in tamarind leaves, skewers of something unidentifiable but delicious, a paste made of cashews and green chilies, flatbread warm from a stone oven, and in a basket near you, tiny stuffed dates. You eat 5 before you realize they're spiked with pepper and honey. You don't regret it. A woman with bright beads woven into her braids offers you a drink. It's served in a carved coconut shell and tastes like roses and limes. Got into a polite argument. You ask what's in it. She says, "Mostly waiting." You think she means it metaphorically. But you do wait 10 minutes for the aftertaste to make up its mind. There's dancing. Of course there's dancing, but not all at once. First, the bride's cousins perform a slow swaying line dance while balancing plates on their heads. Then, a group of children tries to copy them and ends up creating their own chaotic routine that involves at least 2 chickens. The chickens are unbothered. Later, when the music grows bolder, the bride and groom step into the center. No dramatic lifts, no rehearsed choreography. They just move arms low, eyes soft, steps like waves lapping coral. You realize the dance isn't to impress. It's to remember. They're dancing in a circle that's been danced for centuries. And they're not alone, because every elder watching has danced it. Every stone underfoot remembers the rhythm. Even the moonfish lanterns seem to sway slightly. You glance up, the sky is deep navy, dusted with stars, and every rooftop is dotted with silhouettes, quiet watchers, with clay cups and soft eyes. This wedding isn't just for the 2 of them. It's for the street, the city, the coast. It's proof that joy still lives here and is willing to share snacks. As the drums slow and the candles gutter, someone passes around a basket of small cloth pouches. You take one. Inside, a clove, a dried flower, and a tiny silver bead. A grandmother tells you it's for luck, or love, or trade. Depends how you use it. You thank her. She nods, then adds, "Don't eat it. Trust me." You do. You leave the courtyard full, warm, blinking rosewater from your lashes. The lanterns are still swaying. The walls still hum with celebration. And behind you, the sound of laughter echoes like wind through coral bed, sharp, soft, endless. You wake with the taste of lime still lingering on your tongue and a faint clove in your pocket from the night before. You step into the morning haze, which smells like yesterday's incense and today's promise. And you notice again how many accents this coast wears, not just in speech, but in the buildings, the spices, the eyebrows of passers-by, the stitching on someone's hem, the dent in a bronze serving spoon. It's not a melting pot here. It's more like a quilt, or maybe a stew, a very complicated, slightly salty stew, like the one simmering in the market corner. You follow the scent. It leads you to a bubbling pot half buried in coals, tended by a man in a white turban who claims he's from Shiraz. He says it proudly, like it's the only truth that matters today. The pot smells like coconut milk, turmeric, cardamom, and maybe fish. Or not. No one will confirm. He calls it soup, but everyone else calls it something different. A woman with golden bangles says it's Persian porridge. A barefoot boy insists it's Arab breakfast stew. Someone in the back mumbles, "That's just kilwa fish mush. Don't let them lie to you." You ask what's in it. The man grins. "History," he says, then hands you a bowl. It's rich, creamy. It has the texture of rice pudding, but the taste of the sea having a nice afternoon. You catch a hint of ginger, maybe cinnamon, something green and crunchy that turns out to be crushed moringa leaf. You don't ask questions anymore. You just eat. You find a seat on a low wall next to an old man shelling cardamom pods into a folded scrap of linen. He squints at you and asks, "You know who brought coconuts here?" You guess, "The sea?" He snorts, "Persians, or Indians, or God. Depends who you ask." Then he leans in, as if telling a secret. Truth is, no one remembers. But everyone claims the recipe. And he's right. Everywhere you turn, someone is cooking that soup in a variation, a dialect, a contradiction. A Swahili grandmother adds dried shrimp. An Omani merchant insists on rosewater. A Yemeni sailor stirs in dates. A Mombasa boy crushes peanuts into his bowl and won't explain why. And the Portuguese? They just ask for a fork and get laughed at. You sit back and watch the debate swirl, not just in voices but in the rhythm of the hands stirring, ladling, arguing in elbow gestures and spice pinches. And you realize, this soup isn't just food. It's a metaphor with no moral, a poem without a single author. And still, everyone has a spoon in it. A scholar might call this cultural layering. A romantic might call it a delicious dialogue. A grandmother might call it lunch. And they'd all be right. A young woman with a large ladle and a suspiciously elegant posture joins your wall seat. She claims to be part Arab, part Persian, part Makande, and part no one's business. She offers you another bowl. This one has a boiled egg in it. Symbolic, she says, and refuses to elaborate. You eat it anyway. It tastes like warmth and a dare. You ask her where she learned the recipe. She laughs. My grandmother's second husband's cousin's first wife, or maybe the neighbor. Who knows? What matters is, she said, if it doesn't stain your sleeves, it's not done. You look down. Your sleeves are stained. You're officially part of the legacy now. The man in the turban declares that his version uses Persian saffron real, not dyed. He waves a tiny cloth sachet at the crowd. No one believes him, but no one stops him either. It's understood. Truth is negotiable. Flavor is sacred. Someone nearby plays a stringed instrument, soft, plucked notes rising like steam from the bowls. A child sings along with made-up lyrics about soup, salt, and mysterious fish. Two goats wander through the square. One licks a bowl. No one minds. A storyteller begins reciting a tale of a prince who married a woman because her coconut soup made him see stars. Literally, he fell over and hit his head. The storyteller insists it was love, or a concussion, or both. As the sun climbs higher, you feel full not just from the soup, but from the idea that a single dish can carry centuries. That taste can survive war, salt air, and forgetfulness. That coconut soup is not just a meal. It's a passport. Before you leave, you return your empty bowl to the man from Shiraz. He nods solemnly, then points to your sleeve. Good stain, he says. You belong now. And with that, he ladles another bowl for someone else. Another story begins. And you carry your stain like a badge. You're following the sound of music, or what might be music when you see the wall. It's tall, pockmarked, and curved slightly, like the hull of a grounded ship. Coral stone blocks fitted together without mortar. Some still bear gouges, others are blackened at the edges. And at the base, half swallowed by moss, rests a cannon. Short, thick, iron, frowning. You approach. It's not pointed at anything now, just angled toward the sea, as if waiting for someone to pick a fight with the horizon. You've found one of the Portuguese forts, or what's left of it. The Swahili coast has a complicated relationship with the Portuguese, and complicated is the polite version. They arrived in the late 15th century with big ships, sharp crosses, and louder cannons than anyone had seen. Kilwa was sacked. Mombasa burned. And the rhythm of trade, slow, elegant, multilingual, was interrupted by orders barked in bad Arabic and worse manners. They built forts. They bragged in letters. They left graffiti in Latin. Then, eventually, they left. But the cannons stayed. Some were melted down. Others turned into furniture. A few, like this one, were simply forgotten, too heavy to move, too full of silence to destroy. You crouch beside it. Its barrel is rusted. Its base is crumbling. A gecko peeks out of the muzzle and blinks at you, unimpressed. The cannon didn't win. A woman walks by, humming not a European tune, but an old Swahili melody. Slow, descending, built from intervals that remind you of twilight and spices. She nods at the cannon. Still here, eh? She says. You ask if she minds it. She shrugs. It's history, not heritage. You follow her voice. She leads you to an open plaza, where a group of women is seated on mats, singing in Swahili. Call and response. The lead singer starts with a line something about waves and longing, and the others reply with harmonies so tight it feels like a woven mat being shaken loose. You sit under a fig tree and listen. The song is old. You can hear it in the phrasing, the way the vowels lengthen like shadows, the way the pauses are as important as the words. It's not just music, it's memory. A younger woman sits beside you, watching the singers. That one, she says, pointing to the lead, is my aunt. She says she learned the song from a sailor who traded her grandfather a horn of pepper for a verse. You ask if that's true. She smiles. Probably not, but it sounds better than she found it in a book. A historian once wrote that Swahili culture absorbs and adapts without dissolving. Sitting here, you see what he meant. The language is Bantu, at its core, solid, rhythmic, homegrown, but it wears layers of Arabic, Persian, Portuguese, even Hindi like spices in soup, and the songs are no different. A verse might start with the longing of a Yemeni fisherman and end with a joke about a Portuguese sailor's clumsy dance. It's not fusion, it's fluency. The song shifts. Now the women are laughing between lines. The clapping gets faster. Someone adds a hand drum. You don't understand the words, but you do understand the mood. It's a teasing song, a warning, a flirt disguised as a proverb. A child nearby giggles and yells the chorus out of tune. No one minds. You ask the young woman beside you what the song means. She listens carefully, then translates, "If you promise the tide will stay, marry the sand, not the fisherman." You blink. That's unexpectedly profound. She grins. Or completely nonsense. That's the fun of it. The singers rest. One woman pulls a fan from her sash and begins waving it like she's trying to clear ghosts from the air. Another hands out slivers of watermelon. A third begins retuning a stringed instrument with a bow made of goat hair. You realize this isn't performance. It's preservation. And joy. You glance back at the cannon. Still there. Still sulking. But here, it's background noise. The real power lives in the rhythm, in the words that survived, in the melodies that adjusted, shifted, and swayed like dhows in the monsoon refusing to sink. You stay until the music fades into conversation. Someone begins braiding another's hair. The fig tree drops a leaf on your lap. You don't move. You just breathe in the silence. After song, the richest silence of all. And the cannon? It listens, too. But it no longer leads. You're sipping tamarind juice in a shaded courtyard when someone leans over and whispers, "Do you want to hear about the man who tried to steal a whole sack of saffron using only a coconut?" Yes. Obviously yes. You're in Kilwa now, or perhaps you always were. The city folds into itself so smoothly, you sometimes don't notice when you've crossed into legend. Kilwa Kisiwani, to be precise. The ancient island city. Its docks once hosted ships from India, Persia, Arabia, and even China. Its markets overflowed with ivory, gold, tortoiseshell, and spices so fine that poets allegedly described their scent as arguments between angels. And yes, there was once, or perhaps never, a thief. But everyone agrees on his name, Bakari. Bakari the quick-fingered. Bakari of the coconut trick. Bakari the slightly overconfident. They say he was born in the back of a spice stall during the rainy season. His first word was cardamom. His first lie was, "I didn't take it." He had hands like water and feet that made no sound. At the age of 9, he stole a goat's bell, a scholar's ink pot, and an entire grilled fish without anyone noticing. He was caught, of course, by his grandmother. She forgave him, then made him promise never to steal anything that didn't smell good. "Ugly theft brings ugly luck," she warned. Bakari nodded, and then promptly stole a cinnamon stick. Years later, Bakari heard about a legendary shipment, a sack of saffron from Persia, said to be so potent that just sniffing it made you dream in poems. It was locked in a storehouse, guarded by a merchant with a temper, watched by a cat who, they said, could smell lies. So Bakari came up with a plan. It took a coconut, hollowed it out, painted it to resemble a merchant's ink jar, filled it with crushed turmeric, and just a whisper of real saffron stolen naturally from a careless spice vendor who sneezed at the wrong moment. Then he placed it near the merchant's stall and waited. The merchant saw it, and as Bakari hoped, assumed it was his own. After all, who else would own such a fine, coconut-shaped jar of golden powder? He picked it up, inspected it briefly, and carried it into his spice vault, exactly where Bakari wanted it to be. That night, Bakari returned. He crept into the courtyard, silenced the cat with a dried sardine, picked the lock with a hairpin stolen from his cousin's wedding, and entered the vault. It was overwhelming. Sacks of spice towered like soft mountains. The air buzzed with cinnamon, clove, and ambition. A lesser thief might have panicked, but Bakari had focus. He found the real sack of saffron marked with a seal shaped like a phoenix. He replaced it with the decoy coconut, then fled. The next morning, the merchant opened the vault, smelled the air, sneezed, declared everything in order. And it was until someone tried to cook with the saffron and realized it was, in fact, turmeric and crushed marigold petals. By then, Bakari was long gone, or so the story goes. You ask your host, an old woman stirring lentils over coals, if any of it is true. She shrugs. All of it. None of it. But we still tell it. She drops a clove into the pot and adds, "Besides, the lesson's the same." "What lesson?" you ask. She smiles. "Spice is worth more than gold, but only if you know the difference." Historians have found old ledgers in Kilwa trade logs written in Arabic, mentions of goods exchanged for gold, cloth, and ivory. One even notes, one merchant lost saffron to clever fraud. No name, but a little drawing in the corner shows a coconut. Coincidence? Probably. Delightful? Absolutely. You leave the courtyard with your tamarind juice half finished and your heart oddly lighter. Because sometimes, history doesn't arrive in scrolls or battles or treaties. Sometimes it sneaks in through the back gate, smelling faintly of nutmeg and mischief. Sometimes it carries a coconut. You're standing in the shade of a docked dhow, watching the canvas ripple in the breeze, when you notice something odd. One of the sails isn't just sail. It's a contract, ink scrawled across heavy cloth, still legible after what looks like years of sun and salt. The edges are stitched with red thread. The signatures trail along the bottom in 6 different languages, and at least one drawing of what might be a rooster. You point. The dockworker nods. They ran out of paper. You wait. He grins. Or they just wanted everyone to see it. It's a trade agreement, you're told. A deal between a Swahili spice merchant, a Gujarati textile dealer, and a captain with a habit of over-promising. 3 dhows, 40 bolts of Chinese silk, 4 sacks of nutmeg, and something mysteriously labeled as 1 container of cold stars. Probably opals, possibly fermented dates, maybe poetry. The sail-turned contract hangs there, tethered to the mast, flapping out its terms every time the wind shifts. A woman nearby calls it legal air. You ask if it's enforceable. An elderly man, chewing sugarcane, replies, "Only if you believe in dignity." You ask, "And if you don't?" He shrugs. "Then you better row fast." The sail itself is a marvel. Woven from baobab fiber, patched with old cotton, it has the texture of something that's told too many secrets. The ink is faded but firm, a deep indigo that still holds its own against the sky. One clause reads, "All parties agree to dine together should the monsoon delay exceed 3 days." Another reads, "If the nutmeg arrives wet, the poet gets double." You ask who the poet was. No one knows. But the rumor is he always carried a quill behind his ear and used clove oil for ink. In Swahili culture, contracts could be verbal or written. Many were composed in Arabic, and seals were pressed into them with carved ivory stamps. Some were signed with thumbprints dipped in saffron. A few like this one were visible, public, stitched into sails or painted onto shop walls. The logic? If it flaps in the wind, no one can pretend they didn't see it. Accountability by breeze. A young boy appears with a bucket of seawater and a brush. He carefully wipes the sail down, as if it's a sleeping ancestor. You ask if he can read it. He says no, but he can recite it. He does so proudly, mixing real clauses with made-up ones. In the event of fish theft, payment may be made in stories. Salted lemons count as currency only south of Malindi. No party shall mock the captain's dancing unless he initiates the joke. You laugh. He bows and keeps scrubbing. Later, you watch 2 men seated cross-legged on a folded sail nearby, drafting a new contract. One writes, one dictates. They pause often, not because they're unsure of the terms, but because they're arguing over poetic phrasing. Fair and fragrant trade sounds better, one insists. But honest and pungent is more accurate, the other retorts. They settle on trade to please both nose and conscience. You approve. As you leave the dock, You pass a stall selling small fabric scrolls. Each one carries a single clause from an old agreement. Some are real, some are jokes, some are riddles. One reads, "He who forgets the spice list may chew raw ginger as penance." You buy it, hang it from your belt, and wonder if someday someone will find it and believe it meant something important. They'll be right, because sometimes the most powerful contracts aren't the ones kept in safes or libraries. They're the ones that catch the wind, that stain your fingers, that make strangers laugh in unison. They're written not just in ink, but in presence, at least from the outside. Low walls, a flat roof with laundry drifting like prayer flags, a carved wooden door whose arch tilts slightly to the left like it's listening to something. You almost pass it, but then you see the sign, faded but legible. Nyumba ya funguo mia, the house of 100 keys. You stop, because obviously you have questions. The woman at the entrance looks to be about 80, but moves like someone much younger or someone who refuses to age just because others expect her to. She doesn't ask if you're checking in. She simply says, "Pick a key." You look up. Dozens of them hang above the entryway, long iron ones, tiny bronze ones, some carved from bone, others knotted onto ribbons or beads. A few are painted. Several look suspiciously like fish hooks. You ask, "Do they open the rooms?" She grins. Number. Inside, the air smells like clove, soap, and old paper. It's cool, peaceful, unhurried. There are 7 rooms, or 12, or maybe more. The hallways shift. The doors are all different. One has a lion carved into it. Another is covered in patchwork cloth. One is so short you'd need to crawl. You're given a room with no number, just a shell embedded in the doorframe. Your key is made of wood. It doesn't fit the lock. You ask if that's a problem. The woman shrugs. Try the windows. You do. They open with a click. The sea breeze enters like it owns the place. Each guest leaves something behind. A scarf, a shell, a phrase scratched lightly into the underside of a bed frame. The woman Mama Shoka, she tells you later, encourages this. You stay. You give something. That's the rhythm. You leave a cowrie shell under your pillow. Someone finds it years later and writes a poem about the shape of your dreams. At dinner, there is no menu, just a large pot of something steaming and complicated. Rice with tamarind and slivered cashews. Or maybe lentils with dates and sour mango. You don't ask, you just eat. Conversation drifts through the dining hall like spice smoke. Languages overlap. One man speaks in riddles. A girl beside him translates them into proverbs. You understand none of it. You feel completely at home. On the wall is a map, but not of countries. It shows trade winds, ancient shipping lanes, a scattering of cities with names half lost to salt. Barawa, Lamu, Sofala, Hormuz, Calicut. Strings stretch between them, pinned with clove buds instead of tacks. It smells like a journey trying to remember itself. You ask Mama Shoka how long she's run the guest house. She looks at the ceiling. Since before the second mango tree. You wait. She adds, time doesn't behave here, then disappears behind a curtain. That night, you try 3 different keys in your door. None work, but the breeze enters again, cool and curious. You sleep. You dream of doors that open inward and upward and sideways, of corridors that end in markets, of a pillow that tells you a joke while you snore. In the morning, someone has placed a flower on your windowsill. It smells like cardamom and rain. No note. You linger in the courtyard. A man is playing an instrument with only 2 strings. It sounds like a sigh learning to whistle. A woman is sketching something on her bowl, with ink made of ashes. The goat is back. It headbutts your shin with approval. Later, you ask again, why 100 keys? Mama Shoka answers without looking up from her tea. Because no one remembers which one works. You frown. Does one actually work? She sips. Maybe. But the point is, every guest thinks theirs might. So they try. You pose. She adds, that's how you open other things. Not doors, other things. You ask what happens if someone does find the right key. Mama szoka smiles. Then we build a new door. You're brushing your teeth with a neem twig because everyone else is when someone taps your shoulder. He's arriving today, the woman says. Who? She blinks, as if the answer is obvious. The Sultan. Then she vanishes into the morning, trailing rose petals and urgency. You were not planning on meeting royalty. You have nothing to wear. You haven't had tea. You still smell vaguely of banana wine. But by the time you wander into the town square, it's already transformed. The fabric stalls are draped in red and gold. Children are scrubbing the stone pathways with coconut husks. And someone has hung papaya slices on string like festive garlands. You hear whispers. Sultan bin Hamadi bin Zubair. His beard reaches his belt. He owns a zebra that can bow. You do not ask follow-up questions. An older man takes pity on your confusion and hands you a lime leaf. For your pocket, he says. Smells good. Calms nerves. Repels jealousy. You thank him. He points to your feet. Take off your sandals when the drum sounds. Not before. Not after. You nod, trying to look less like someone who learned about the Sultan's visit 30 seconds ago. Then comes the protocol. Mama Shoka appears out of nowhere, wielding a small mango and a serious expression. Repeat after me, she says. Step 1. Stand with hands open, palms up, not because you expect something, but to show you're hiding nothing. Step 2. Bow your head but not too low. The Sultan should see your face, not your scalp. Step 3. Offer the mango. Never greet him empty-handed, she says. Fruit shows humility. Pineapples show ambition. Bananas are complicated. And you hold the mango like it's a fragile truth. You ask, what happens if I do it wrong? She frowns. The last person who gave the wrong fruit was sent to the cinnamon fields for a week. You pose. That doesn't sound so bad. She leans in. Have you ever tried hauling cinnamon bark in the rain? You clutch the mango tighter. Then the drums begin, low and slow, like thunder pretending to be polite. Everyone steps back, sandals off. The square is still, except for the papaya garlands swaying slightly in the breeze. And from the far end of the street, a tall figure in white embroidered robes, gold trim, a beard that does in fact reach his belt. He is smiling, but in the way cliffs smile it waves. You bow, palms up, head tilted, mango presented like a peace treaty signed in fruit. He stops before you, looks at the mango, nods once, and says, good color. You exhale, possibly for the first time in 5 minutes. The Sultan moves on, blesses a child, accepts a jasmine garland, compliments someone's goat, which immediately faints with pride. He is regal, yes, but also local. His voice carries the cadence of the coast's soft vowels, unexpected humor, the occasional pause for tea. You watch him speak with a vendor selling embroidered caps. He picks one up, inspects it, asks, is this the one that improves memory? The vendor replies, deadpan, only if you wear it backwards. The Sultan laughs, then buys two. Later, you learn that sultans weren't always figureheads here. Some ruled from palaces on coral cliffs. Some controlled fleets of does. Some wrote poetry under pen names. One was rumored to keep pet flamingos. That part is disputed. But all of them were expected to walk the market, speak with fishermen, taste the mangoes, and never under any circumstance insult a grandmother's rice. You're pulled into a procession. Not formally, you just end up in it. People are singing. Someone hands you a tambourine made from fish skin and brass coins. You try to keep up. You fail. No one minds. The Sultan circles the market, then pauses near the mosque. He turns to the crowd, and in perfect Swahili he says, "May your pots be full, your feet unburnt, and your secrets kept by the sea." Everyone repeats it, even the goats. He departs on foot. No horse, no carriage, just sandals and shadow. The square slowly returns to its usual hum. You're left with an empty mango peel, a slightly sweaty lime leaf, and the sense that you just passed an exam you never studied for. Mama Shoka appears once more. "You did well," she says. You ask, "Would I really have been sent to the cinnamon fields?" She smiles. "Number. That's just a story. Pause. But the last one brought a pineapple upside down. He did have to peel cloves for a week. You promise to choose your fruit more carefully in the future." He sneezes before you even see him. A sharp, dramatic explosion of breath from behind a stack of woven baskets, followed by a sigh so long it could be a soliloquy. You round the corner and find him hunched over a spice cart, eyes watering, nose red, surrounded by mounds of pepper, black, white, green ground, whole, sun-dried, pickled. He is, quite literally, up to his ears in pepper. Another sneeze. This one threatens to blow a sack of cardamom into the street. He looks up, blinking. "Friend," he says in a voice both nasal and noble, "never trust a shipment that arrives early. It's always suspicious, and it will always make you sneeze." You nod, because, frankly, you've never heard truer words. He introduces himself with a dramatic bow, or possibly a sneeze disguised as one. "Bavin, trader of spices, whisperer of clove markets, and seasonal sufferer of pepper betrayal." You stifle a laugh. He doesn't mind. He's used to it. Bhavin is from Gujarat. His accent is thick with melody. His robes are covered in fine yellow dust, and his ledger, which he carries tied to his waist like a sword, is full of drawings, not numbers. He shows you a page. One column is marked with little peppercorns, some happy-faced, some frowning. These, he says, pointing at the frowning ones, were too enthusiastic, burst right in the sun, lost half their flavor, like heartbreak in a stew. And you ask how long he's been trading here on the coast. He considers, "Since before my mustache knew sadness." That seems long enough. Swahili-Gujarati trade goes back centuries. Long before maps caught up, these two coasts were swapping silk, gems, brass, ghee, and of course spices. Some came by dhow, some by rumor, some by mistake. Bhavin insists his great-uncle once accidentally traded 10 camels for a single jar of cinnamon. "Worth it," he says. Even the camels agreed. A child runs by and sneezes theatrically. Bhavin bows toward him. "Welcome, brother." You ask if he's allergic to pepper. "No," he says. "I'm allergic to deception." He gestures at a sack. "This one is not from Malabar, though it claims to be. Smell it." You do. "It smells like pepper." "Exactly," he says triumphantly. Too obvious. He gives you a lesson in sneezing etiquette. 1 sneeze means the pepper is playful. 2 sneezes means it's trying to impress you. 3? Send it back to the hills. It's not ready. He sneezes again. 4 is just personal, he mutters. Despite the nasal catastrophe, he's in good spirits. Every customer is greeted with a joke, a sneeze, and a tiny sample of spice in a palm leaf cone. The man is a machine of generosity and mucus. You watch him barter with a tea vendor. He trades half a jar of smoked turmeric for 3 spoonfuls of dried hibiscus. They seal the deal by throwing exactly 1 peanut at each other. It's tradition, apparently. You ask if he ever gets tired of sneezing. Bhavin tilts his head. "It's the price of clarity," he says. "To know a spice, you must inhale its story." Another sneeze. Achoo! Another story, apparently. He shows you a jar of laughing cardamom, so named because it bursts open unexpectedly, like a joke too eager to wait its turn, and a small bag of sad cinnamon curled tight and dry, smelling like weddings that didn't happen. He names all his spices. You suspect he gives them birthdays. As he's packing up, Bhavin offers you a gift, a single peppercorn, black, shiny, slightly wrinkled, for your pocket, he says, to remind you that even the smallest things carry fire. You accept it. You sneeze immediately. He nods, pleased. The sun begins to set, painting the air with gold and red. Bhavin ties his ledger shut with a red string, adjusts his spice sacks like a man preparing for battle, and sneezes one last time loudly, proudly, into the coming twilight. You wave goodbye. He waves back, then yells, "If your dreams are spicy tonight, you're welcome." The coins here clink. Yes, silver dirhams, bronze bits, the occasional stamped copper, but the true currency of the Swahili coast. It rattles. Tiny, curved, glossy, white, cowries. Once the shells of sea snails. Now, the shells of everything. Deals, debts, dowries, gossip. And no one counts them faster than the boy on the steps. He's barefoot, shirtless, his head wrapped in a strip of indigo cloth. His fingers fly across a low wooden tray filled with cowries, separating them into piles with a speed that borders on magic. You watch. One hand scoops, one hand flicks. 10 here, 20 there, 3 extras stashed near his ankle for emotional tax, he says with a wink. You ask his name. He replies, too expensive. Then adds, but you can call me Peely. That's the free version. Peely counts for everyone. The date vendor, the palm wine lady, even Bhavin, the sneezy spice trader, who shows up mid-count to deliver a wrapped bundle of saffron and sneezes directly into the discount pile. Peely doesn't blink. He just sneezes back, then keeps counting. Cowries aren't originally from East Africa. They came by sea from the Maldives, from India, from whoever had the best current that season. And yet, here, they stuck. Not just as money, but as metaphor. You hear someone say, she has cowries in her eyes. You're told it means she sees value in things no one else does. You like that. Peely offers to teach you the art of counting. You accept. He gives you a scoop, a dried gourd, and a tray scratched with tally lines. You spill the cowries like marbles. They bounce, they clatter. One lands in your sandal. Peely sighs. You're a poet, not a counter, he says. You accept this. He demonstrates again. Flick, slide, stack, stack again. His fingers make a sound like soft rain. You ask how he learned. From my mother, he says. She counted dowries, could tell a love story by the weight of a handful. You ask if he misses her. He shrugs. She's not gone, just busy. She counts taxes now. He grins, much less romantic. A woman walks by carrying a cloth bag that jingles faintly. She drops it on the tray. Peely opens it, sniffs it, and frowns. These are beach cowries, he says, scandalized. She gasps in mock horror. I washed them, she protests. He sighs. That only makes them look honest, doesn't make them trustworthy. Still, he accepts the payment after licking one for good luck. You try not to stare. A historian once claimed that cowries were the language of low-value exchange. Peely would disagree. He says, they're not low, they're small, that's different. He flips one between his fingers like a coin, then balances it on his knuckle. Small things build big promises. You suspect he's quoting someone, or inventing wisdom as he goes. Either way, you're convinced. Nearby, a goat noses your ankle. It's wearing a necklace made of what else cowries? Peely says, she belongs to the mango vendor. Counts her tips better than he does. You ask if the goat is for sale. He shakes his head. Too valuable. She once negotiated down the price of 3 pineapples. You're not sure if he's joking. Neither is he. Later, Peely opens a small pouch tied around his ankle. Inside are 10 cowries unlike any others, pinkish, polished to a shine, warm from being carried close. These are my good luck ones, he says. Do they work? He nods. Every time I lose one, Something bad happens. You ask, like what? He frowns. I lose a cowrie. You accept this logic. He gives you one not from the pouch, but from a different pile. Slightly chipped, still beautiful. For your ear, he says. Hang it. It'll tell you when someone's lying. You ask if he believes that. No, he says. But it makes liars uncomfortable. As the sun slants golden, Pilly packs up his tray, his scoops, his secret stashes. He offers you one last word of advice. If someone pays you exactly right, be suspicious. Generous people are forgetful. Honest people round up. Only careful people count it perfect. You nod and wonder what kind of person you are. The cowries in your pocket clink softly as you walk away. You feel a little wealthier, even if no one else would agree. You weren't planning to find it, but the door is slightly ajar, barely enough to see the corner of a stone bench, the curve of a frangipani tree, and the unmistakable smell of ink. Not fresh ink, not sharp, but warm, dusty, earthy ink. The kind that's been sitting in a sunbeam for 3 hours and has opinions about poetry. You push the door gently. It creaks in protest. A chat darts past your ankle like a punctuation mark. And just like that, you're in. The courtyard is small, shaded, and laced with climbing vines. A cracked clay basin bubbles quietly in one corner. A papaya tree leans lazily toward the sunlight. And against the far wall, half hidden by scrolls and stacked paper, sits a man writing with a reed pen. You think he's drawing, until you step closer and realize he's copying poems. By hand, onto paper made of banana fiber, using ink that smells faintly of cloves and goat milk. You clear your throat. He glances up, squints, then gestures to the bench without a word. You sit. His name is Dowdy. He doesn't ask yours. Instead, he dips his pen and says, "Do you prefer metaphors or declarations?" You blink. He clarifies, "For your letter. Everyone writes one." You look around. There are pages hung on clotheslines, like drying laundry, some in Arabic script, some in Swahili, one or two in delicate curling Chinese. You ask, "What kind of letters?" Dowdy shrugs. "Any kind. Apologies, warnings, compliments, love that never landed." You ask, "And where do they go?" He replies, "Nowhere. They just exist. That's the point." You believe him. He offers you a sheet of paper. It's not quite square. Smells like cinnamon and something chalky. You hold it, hesitant. "What do I write?" you ask. He replies, "Start with a truth, then see if it survives." You write, "It doesn't matter what." The act itself, the scratch of the reed pen, the ink seeping slowly into the paper's grain, is its own ritual. By the time you finish, the papaya tree has dropped 2 leaves. The cat has claimed your sandal as a bed. Dowdy is humming a melody with no words and too many pauses. He takes your page, reads it without comment, then slides it into a wooden box already overflowing with paper. "That's the archive," he explains. You ask, "Who reads it?" He shrugs. "People, ghosts, the sea breeze." Then adds, "Sometimes just me." You walk the perimeter of the courtyard. There are murals on the walls, faded verses painted in ochre and charcoal. Some are legible. Others have been overwritten by time, lichen, and the occasional bird. You read what you can. To wait is to love without being seen. "Spices are memories we swallow." She said goodbye in a language I didn't speak. I understood anyway. You linger at that last one. A young girl appears from behind a curtain, carrying a tray with 2 tiny cups of coffee, bitter, thick, spiced with cardamom. She doesn't speak. She just hands you a cup and vanishes again. You sip. The coffee is as strong as Dowdy's pen strokes. You ask how long he's been here. Dowdy shrugs. "Since the last full monsoon." You raise an eyebrow. He clarifies, "Not the one with the mango flood. The one before, when the ink ran off the shelves." You nod, as if this makes perfect sense. It does. In this courtyard, time bends like a vine seeking sun. He tells you he once copied a poem so beautiful it made a goat faint. You laugh. He doesn't. You think I joke, he says. But beauty is dangerous. You notice a thick scroll rolled and tied with blue ribbon. You ask, "What's that?" He replies, "A list of things people regret but still won't apologize for." You ask if you can read it. He says no, then adds, "You can add to it." You politely decline. For now, as the light begins to shift, Dowdy dips his pen again. You ask what he's writing. "An insult," he replies cheerfully, "but in metaphor, so it can be mistaken for a compliment." You ask to hear it. He recites, "Your presence lingers like boiled fish on a silk pillow." You laugh. He grins. "That's for my cousin." Before you leave, he offers you a gift. A tiny bottle of ink, corked, sealed with wax. The label reads, "For when silence needs punctuation." You tuck it into your pocket, feeling suddenly responsible. You exit the courtyard slowly. The cat watches you from the wall, one eye closed. The breeze ruffles the papers on the line. And somewhere behind you, a pen scratches across another forgotten letter, adding one more sentence to a library no one else will ever catalog. But it exists, and that's enough. You hear him before you see him. A string of muttered words in frustrated Arabic, followed by a thud, a groan, and a very formal-sounding curse directed at a palm tree. You round the corner and find a man in pristine white robes, standing ankle-deep in a puddle, clutching a scroll in one hand and a very confused chicken in the other. He looks up, soaked, indignant, and says in perfect Arabic, "This place is trying to swallow me." The chicken clucks in agreement. His name is Hakam ibn Salim, and he arrived 3 days ago from Muscat to conduct a routine cultural survey of Swahili trade cities. He has a leather notebook, a long list of Arabic idioms, and the air of someone who expected this to go much more smoothly. "I was told Swahili is 40% Arabic," he says, exasperated. "So why can't I understand anything?" You try to explain, but how do you explain that Swahili is not a diluted form of Arabic? It's not a container for borrowed words, it's its own ocean. And Hakam, bless him, has only packed a map for the desert. He lists the things that have confused him so far. Someone offered him pilau. He expected a scroll, not rice. A boy asked if he wanted to choma. He thought it meant blessings, not barbecue. He mistook caribou, welcome, for "be near me forever," and is now accidentally engaged. He shows you the ring. It's made of a soda cap and sea glass. He's genuinely worried. Linguists have long argued about Swahili's structure, how it dances with Arabic, borrows Portuguese, flirts with Persian, and still roots itself firmly in Bantu grammar. Hakam has walked straight into that dance floor and tried to lead. He's been stepped on ever since. He opens his notebook. Inside, rows of Swahili words written in Arabic script, with wildly inaccurate translations. You point to one, Samahani. He's written, "Divine Cloud." You gently correct it. "Excuse me," he frowns, "but it sounds so beautiful." You nod. It is, but not always for the reasons you think. He tries again. He stops a young woman carrying a basket of cassava leaves and attempts to ask for directions to the mosque. She squints at him, replies in fast Swahili, gestures toward a goat, and disappears. Hakam looks devastated. You translate, "She said the muezzin is late because he tripped on his sandals." He sighs. Even their excuses are poetic. You sit with him on a bench shaded by a flowering tree whose name neither of you know. He admits something quietly. "I thought this would be simple, like tracing a river back to its source. I didn't expect the river to turn into a song." You tell him that's normal, that everyone who comes here thinks they'll decipher the coast. Then the coast rearranges itself and hands them a mango. He nods, and then asks you to dance. He pulls a phrase from his notebook. Maji ufuata mkondo. He translates it. Water follows the path. You say, not quite. It follows the curve. He looks up. Is there a difference? You smile. Only if you're trying to walk straight. You walk together through the market. He points to objects and tries their Swahili names. Kitungu, Nditsi, Mkate Wanatsi. He mispronounces all of them. A vendor corrects him by laughing. It doesn't feel cruel, just part of the learning. You notice he's stopped taking notes. Instead, he's listening to the rhythm of conversation, the pauses between price and poetry, the way someone says pole sorry and means I see you even in your mistake. He sighs, but this time with a smile. This language, he says, is not a book. It's a hammock. It wants you to rest in it. Later, someone offers him a piece of grilled cassava. He accepts it without hesitation, chews, nods, and says, in perfect Swahili, Asante kwa chakula. Thank you for the food. They smile. They clap him on the back. The goat approves. You part ways near a carved doorway. He turns to you and says, tell them I tried. Tell them the coast was gentle with me. You promise. He smiles, then sneezes probably from the pepper, and disappears into the crowd. Still a little lost, but no longer afraid of it. It's hidden behind a wall, the color of old lemons, and the scent of yesterday's incense. A narrow doorway, unmarked, unimpressed, leads to it. No sign, no guide, just the unmistakable smell of sandalwood curling through the air like a secret being whispered. You step inside. It's cooler here, and suddenly quieter. The garden isn't large, more of a courtyard really, but every inch of it is alive with purpose. There are trees you recognize, mango, papaya, coconut, and others you don't. Slender, silver-leaved, with bark that smells like forgotten perfume. Sandalwood. You walk past rows of clay pots with tiny saplings. Some are tagged with names not of the trees, but of people. You spot Fatima binti Nasra, planted after the wedding. Mizi Hassan's argument tree. Still waiting for an apology. You pause at that last one. It looks healthy. Two women are pruning a flowering bush nearby. One snips with expert precision. The other talks non-stop. You don't catch every word, but phrases float like petals. And she still wears his mother's ring. Claimed the chicken was his. But everyone knows. Then the imam said, that's not a metaphor, and walked out. You smile. You've found the gossip garden. It's a long tradition on the coast. Elders gather in shaded gardens, ostensibly to tend herbs, but really to tend information. Secrets, warnings, alliances, compliments, all trimmed, watered, and passed along with mint sprigs. It's not malicious. It's maintenance. You're invited to sit. A carved wooden bench beneath a frangipani tree. A woman offers you a cup of cold hibiscus tea and a slice of dried ginger. The tea is tart. The ginger is sharp. The mood is gentle. Someone asks where you're from. You answer vaguely. Someone else nods knowingly. We thought so. You don't know what that means. You're not sure they do either. They speak in layered tones. Compliments that carry warnings. Questions disguised as recipes. Statements that sound like weather reports but are clearly about marriage. You hear, the jackfruit is late this year. Followed by, so is Aminatu's apology. You sip your tea and let it wash over you. One woman opens a notebook. She says she's tracking tree growth, but her pages are filled with initials, arrows, and cryptic notations. R plus S equals too soon. Z, no longer sulking. Worrisome. New mango tree. Too ambitious? You ask if she's a botanist. She says, technically, then adds, emotionally. There's a small raised bed near the back labeled, medicinal, but unreliable. It contains a patch of lemon balm, some suspicious aloe, and what looks like a weed with very smug leaves. You ask what it does. Someone says, it encourages honesty. Another snorts, only if brewed upside down during a waning moon. The first woman replies, well, that's your experience. You take notes. Or at least, you pretend to. One of the sandalwood trees is wrapped with string red, green, gold. You ask why. A grandmother answers, each thread is a promise made while angry. The tree softens them over time. You find yourself touching the bark. It smells like warmth and apology. The conversation turns to cooking. But it's not really about food. You can't make proper okra stew without knowing her real father. He used too much clove just like his temper. But the fish was fresh. I'll give him that. You nod sagely. They seem to approve. Someone mentions a wedding that ended before the dessert course. Someone else swears a ghost lives in the lemon tree but only appears when someone lies about cardamom. You try not to laugh. You fail. They like that. You ask what the garden is for. They look surprised. It's where we grow truth, says one. It's where we compost lies, says another. It's where we rest our knees and sharpen our tongues, adds a third sipping tea. All of them are correct. Before you leave, they hand you a small bundle. Inside, a sandalwood sprig, a thread of red string, and a clove tucked into a folded leaf. It's not magic, they say, but it's close. You ask what to do with it. They reply, keep it near your doorway. It will either ward off gossip or invite better gossip in. You thank them. They wave you off like an old friend. As you pass back through the lemon-colored wall, you realize your shirt smells faintly of sandalwood now. You don't know whether that makes you more trustworthy or just more interesting. Either way, you smile, and you don't tell anyone where you've been. Because the first rule of the gossip garden, you never admit it exists. You spot it from a rooftop first, a pale tower rising from the edge of the old city like a finger raised politely in thought. Not the tallest thing around, not the newest, but something about it makes you pause mid-sip of your tamarind tea. A lighthouse, but not just any lighthouse. You walk toward it through narrow alleys, brushing past hanging laundry and small conspiracies whispered between neighbors. The ground underfoot is slick with yesterday's rain. The scent of salt and charcoal floats in the air like a forgotten recipe. When you arrive, the tower stands calmly before you, wrapped in flaking white plaster, its stone bones just visible at the corners. The door is open or perhaps never really closes. You climb. The steps spiral tight. They are uneven, some shallow, some steep, as if laid down by different hands in different centuries. Scratched into one riser, a name, into another, a fish, into a third, a prayer, in Arabic, faded but persistent. Your knees complain. You ignore them. You reach the top and step into a room filled with light and wind and an owl. Yes, an owl. It blinks once at you from its perch near a carved window, then turns away as if to say, I am not the most interesting thing here. Keep going. You do. A man stands near the far wall, older, robed, silent. He gestures to the center of the floor, where a compass is inlaid with tiny tiles of obsidian black, coral white, and in the very middle, a small brass arrow, fixed, unshaking, pointing not north but northeast. Mecca, the man says softly. You ask, but isn't this a lighthouse? He nods. It does both. This was once a beacon for ships. Now it's a beacon for prayers. By day, it helped sailors find the coast. By night, it helps worshippers find their direction. The logic is simple and beautiful. The room is octagonal. Each wall holds a narrow window facing a different landmark. One opens to the sea, where the horizon flickers with the silver fins of distant does. One frames the market where someone is arguing about pineapples with great passion. One looks toward the hills, green and soft and full of secrets. But the most prominent window faces Mecca, and beneath it, a nisha, a mihrab, delicate, carved, quiet. You ask how old the building is. The man shrugs. Old enough to forget why it was first built. young enough to still be useful. You ask how long he's been its caretaker. He smiles. Since the last time someone replaced the oil lamp. You ask when that was. He doesn't answer. You understand. On a shelf sits a worn leather notebook, open to a page with 5 names and 5 dates. Next to each, a small note. Fog this morning. Ship delayed. Visitors from Oman. Left a clove. Storm passed. 1 window cracked. Owl returned. Again. No light tonight. Just moon. You close the notebook gently. The owl hoots softly. You realize it's watching the compass. Or maybe guarding it. You ask if it has a name. The man replies, call him whatever you like. He doesn't answer. You try. Sailor? The owl blinks. You decide that counts. You sit. There's a bench carved into the wall, worn smooth by years of elbows and quiet thoughts. You watch the light drift across the compass tiles as the sun leans westward. You ask, do people still come here to pray? The man nods. Some, not always on time, not always for the right reasons, but yes. Then he adds, sometimes they just need to see the arrow. You think of all the travelers who've stood here, sea-stained and wind-tossed, squinting toward Mecca. You think of all the prayers sent quietly through this tiny window, unrecorded, unremarked, but still real. You think, what a gentle kind of direction. Before you leave, the man hands you a small stone round, cool, with a hole worn through the center. For your pocket, he says. You ask what it's for. He replies. Reminds you that even stones point somewhere if you pay attention. You thank him. The owl hoots again, possibly in agreement. You descend the stairs slowly. Each step feels more deliberate now. At the bottom, you step into the sun, squinting. The breeze smells of myrrh and salt. And though the world is loud again, goats, bells, vendors, feet, you carry a stillness with you, a compass in your chest, a lighthouse in your mind, a stone in your pocket. You spot the first one stretched across a coral window ledge, eyes half closed, tail flicking lazily in time with the breeze. It looks at you, judges you, then closes its eyes again, fully unimpressed. It smells faintly of frankincense. You blink, sniff the air, sniff again. Yes, the cat smells like incense. You pose. A second cat appears black, sleek, with white toes. It weaves between your ankles, like you've been pre-approved. Also smells like incense. Myrrh, maybe. Or aged sandalwood. You are now very curious. You follow them. Not because they demand it, they're cats after all, but because you need to know why half the feline population of the Swahili coast smells like a sacred offering. The trail leads through alleyways, warmed by afternoon sun, past a man slicing mango with the precision of a jeweler, past 3 children giggling over a chicken in a hat. You end up outside a modest stone house with an arched door and a plaque that simply reads, Ukarimu wa paka, hospitality of cats. Of course, you knock. No answer. You knock again. Still, nothing but the door creaks open anyway, pushed from the inside by a paw. You step in. The house smells like spice and calm. Not the sharp, aggressive scent of a busy kitchen, but the lingering sweetness of yesterday's clove tea, sandalwood ash, and a life lived gently. It's also full of cats. Not covered in them, this isn't a cautionary tale, but they're everywhere in that nonchalant, territorial way cats have. 1 on the stair, 2 on the rafters, 1 curled in a woven basket with a lemon peel for a pillow. Each one smells faintly sacred. You feel underdressed. A woman appears from behind a curtain. She's wearing a faded wrap and has a smudge of something charcoal-colored on her forehead. She doesn't look surprised to see you. She gestures toward a cushion. You sit. A ginger cat immediately climbs into your lap, purrs once, and settles in like an entitled perfume bottle. The woman speaks. They sleep in the incense bowls. You blink. Sorry? She nods toward the small ceramic burners in the corners of the room. Each one is still warm, holding the last crumbs of burnt myrrh, clove stems, dried orange peel. Their fur absorbs it, she explains. They nap. They rise. They carry the scent into the street. You ask if it's intentional. She smiles. The napping? Yes. The incense? Number. But we've learned not to question it. You learn her name is Bibi Tunu, and that she's the keeper of the cat sanctuary / reading room / temple of naps. People bring her books to copy, herbs to dry, letters to deliver, and sometimes cats to bless. You ask if the cats are sacred? She replies, they think they are. You nod. She tells you that centuries ago, sailors brought cats to guard food stores on doughs. The cats disembarked, made friends with the city, and never left. They liked the sun, and the fish, and being talked about. Now, they drift through homes, mosques, markets, occasionally stealing sardines, always collecting secrets. They hear everything, she says. You ask if they repeat it. She raises an eyebrow. Only to people who smell trustworthy. She offers you tea, bitter and thick, with a hint of tamarind and something smoky. A cat perches on the rim of the teapot and watches you sip. You suddenly feel very judged and very awake. She shows you her record book. It's not for humans. It's for the cats. Each one has a name, a drawing, a list of places it prefers to nap, and a line or two of what she calls personality notes. You read, Mizijiko naps on holy books, possibly for attention. Bintimoto startles at thunder, but recovers with flair. Kijana once chased a rooster into a wedding procession. Not sorry. You ask how many she's recorded. She shrugs. Enough to know they run this place. We're just paying rent. You notice one cat sitting perfectly still on a woven mat, eyes closed. You ask if it's meditating. She replies, number, but someone once told him he was majestic, and he's been like this ever since. You laugh. So does she. The cat does not. Before you leave, she gives you a pinch of dried incense wrapped in cloth and tied with thread. For your room, she says. It'll make your dreams smell less worried. You ask what it's made of. She lists orange rind, burned rice paper, 3 cloves, and the hair from a cat named Professor. You thank her. The ginger cat in your lap purrs once, then leaps off like it's late for a meeting. Outside, the breeze carries the scent of sandalwood again. You pass a child stroking a tabby. The child inhales. Smells like Tuesday, they say. You believe them. It begins with an empty dock, not broken, not storm-shattered, just still. The sails are tied. The wind holds its breath, and the fishermen sit on their upturned baskets, playing a game with cowrie shells and looking at the horizon like it owes them an apology. You ask what's going on. An old woman, chewing dried mango, replies without looking up. The sea's in one of her moods again. She tells you the story. Not with drama. Not with urgency. Just the kind of calm patience used for warnings disguised as weather forecasts. There was a year, she says, when the ocean stopped giving. No fish. No breeze. No trade winds. Just silence. And heat. The dhows bobbed uselessly at anchor. The salt pans turned bitter, and even the mangoes seemed smaller. Some said it was punishment for pride, for waste, for ignoring the old rituals. Others said the monsoon simply forgot them. But the Swahili coast doesn't wait idly. So they tried to negotiate. First came the offering bowls, placed at low tide, filled with rice, dates, and cloves. The waves took them and returned them chewed. Then came the salt songs, old melodies sung at dawn, asking the sea to remember its role. One woman sang so beautifully that a dolphin followed her home. He didn't help, but he stayed a while. Next came the procession. Everyone barefoot, everyone silent. One child carried a fish carved from mango wood. They placed it at the edge of the tide. It floated for 3 days. Then sunk. The ocean said nothing. Meanwhile, the merchants argued. We must wait. We must go south. We must trade with each other. One man suggested inventing new fish. He was gently told to go invent them elsewhere. A teenage boy painted a mural on the sea wall of the ocean asleep, dreaming of gold. It was beautiful. It was immediately defaced by a goat. People adapted. They traded memories instead of spices, told stories as currency, invented a market where one grandmother offered a blessing in exchange for a secret recipe. The economy didn't collapse. It just shifted. And then, one day, a woman named Saida brought out a clay pot. No one knows what was in it. Some say crushed mango leaves and coral powder. Some say the tears of someone who missed the sea too much. One child insists it was just soup. Whatever it was, she placed it at the shoreline at sunset, whispered something into the wind, and walked away. The tide came in and kept coming. By morning, the docks were full again. The wind returned, lazy but sincere. A fleet of dhows appeared on the horizon, sails fat with stories and cinnamon. Someone claimed the sea yawned. Someone else swore they heard it murmur, "Fine, but behave." You finish the story, sitting on that same dock. The ocean laps quietly below. A fisherman nearby nods. He's heard the story. Says it happened before. Might happen again. The sea's a traitor, he says. But she never forgets who forgets her. He shows you a charm tied around his ankle. A shell. A knot of string. A tiny coin with no face. For when the tide's feeling stubborn, you ask if it works. He shrugs. She hasn't eaten my boat. Yet. You walk the beach as the sun dips, casting gold onto the water like someone spilling treasure slowly. You think of all the negotiations the coast has made over the centuries, with waves, with wind, with itself. How trade was never just transaction. It was relationship. And sometimes, even relationships take breaks. As you pass the tide line, you see something half buried in sand. You dig gently. A fish, carved from mango wood, faded, but still smiling. You're looking for a tea stall. That's all. Someone told you it was on the street just past the coral house, where the cat sleeps next to the broken drum. Simple enough. But the first problem is, the cat has moved. The second, you've entered a street with more names than buildings. The sign at the entrance says, Makate Wambao Street. You translate, bread of wood. Odd, but charming. You walk a little. Then someone refers to it as Askari Yakale Street, Old Soldier Street. Further in, a boy insists it's Barabara Yaharufu Street of Smells. A deliveryman calls it Alley of Lost Sandals. At this point, you suspect everyone is right. The street itself seems to shift tone every 10 paces. First, it smells of rosewater and iron. Someone's washing a blade near potted basil. Then cardamom and charcoal. A vendor is roasting spiced cashews with the intensity of a blacksmith. Then old rope and new soap laundry swings overhead like prayer flags for people who spill things. You keep walking. Each doorway is labeled differently. Painted tiles, scratched chalk, brass plaques in Arabic, Swahili, and a version of Portuguese that's forgotten half its verbs. One building has no number, only a carved wooden panel that reads, "If you are meant to find this door, you already know why." You leave it alone. You ask an old man what the street is actually called. He waves a hand dismissively. Which decade? You blink. Explains, in the 1702nd, it was Camel Street. In the 1802nd, Cinnamon Lane. In the colonial period, it had a British name no one remembers. Then Mango Alley. Then Teacher's Path. Then Ghost Road. You ask what it is now. He shrugs. Depends on how you're walking. A child interrupts. It's Sticky Street. You ask why. They show you the soles of their feet, covered in squished tamarind. Fair enough. Someone else swears it's called the Street of First Kisses. Another, where my aunt lost a chicken. Another, where my uncle claimed he could smell gold. At this point, you realize it's not one street. It's all the stories people left behind on it. You finally spot a sign nailed crookedly to a palm trunk. Official street name, Jambi Street. Beneath it, scribbled in charcoal. Also, the Street of Maybe. You accept this. A spice vendor waves you over. She offers you a sample of her special mix, 5 crushed seeds, 2 dried petals, and 1 secret she swears she'll tell you if the tea makes you cry. You ask for the tea. It's sweet, then sharp, then suddenly nostalgic for something you've never tasted before. You wipe a tear. She smiles, then whispers, "My cat's name is Banana. That was the secret." You don't know what to do with that. She shrugs. Neither does the cat. You continue walking. A mural covers the side of one building layered with old paint, graffiti, and at least 3 partial poems. You read what you can. This wall remembers your footsteps. The scent of clove oil when you lied. A street is just a sentence we haven't finished yet. You linger, then move on. At the corner, 2 men are arguing gently about who first fell in love on this street. One says it was his grandmother. The other says it was his grandmother's enemy. They agree it involved perfume and mismatched sandals. You wish there was a plaque. There probably is somewhere. Finally, you find the tea stall. It's exactly where you started. You order a cup. It tastes like everything you've seen today: clove, mango, wood, forgotten names, and something warm that doesn't translate. The vendor asks how you found the place. You say, "The street showed me." He nods. That's the only map we trust. You hear the hammer before you see the shop. Not harsh, not the clang of construction, but a softer, rhythmic tuck-tuck-tuck, like someone knocking politely on history's door. You follow the sound through a lane that smells of sawdust, old rope, and limes that have overstayed their welcome. There it is. A wooden workshop tucked between 2 coral stone buildings, half in the sun, half in shadow. And perched inside, cross-legged on a mat, is the carpenter. He looks up, sees you, nods once, then returns to planing the edge of what appears to be a window. A window with no glass, no hinges, and no frame. You step closer. He gestures to a stool. You sit. He introduces himself as Yusuf bin Malik. Born here, left once, regretted it, returned. He builds furniture, sometimes for weddings, sometimes for markets, but mostly, he says with a shrug, for those who've already left. You ask what that means. He points to a small wooden stool beside the doorway, carved with swirls and faded names. That's for Fatuma. She passed in 1942, but her cat still waits for her at sunset. You look closer. There's a strip of dried fish on the stool. You don't ask who puts it there. You already know. The carpenter builds for the dead, and for the almost dead, and for the not quite gone. He builds altars, yes, but also chairs no one sits in, cribs for children born in dreams, tiny cabinets that people use to store regrets. Sometimes, he says, the ghosts request them. Sometimes, the living do on their behalf. He shows you a narrow, elegant bed made entirely of driftwood and mangrove root. No mattress, no pillows. You ask who it's for. He answers, for dreams that never stayed the night. You nod. That seems fair. Next, he pulls out a door full-sized, hand-carved, heavy, but there's no house for it. No hinges, no place to put it. He says it's for someone who passed away before they could finish building their home. They said they'd come back. I figured they'd need a way in. You run your fingers along the wood. The grain is soft, like it's already been touched by many hands. You don't ask how he knows what to build. He wouldn't answer anyway. He hands you a small box, intricately carved, smooth, just big enough for a secret. What's in it, you ask? He smiles. Nothing. That's the point. It's for someone who forgot something important. They needed a place to keep the forgetting. You try to return it. He waves it away. It's yours now. Just don't remember why. In the corner of the shop sits a bench with no legs. You ask if it's broken. He shakes his head. It's for someone who never wanted to sit still. At one point, a breeze stirs through the room and a curtain flutters. He looks up, then says, "She's back." You glance around. No one there. But the curtain settles slowly, like someone just passed through. He adds, "She only visits when I'm carving fig wood. Likes the smell. Reminds her of her wedding." You inhale. It's sweet, dusty, and old in a way that comforts more than it haunts. You ask if people believe in his work. He shrugs. Some laugh. Some cry. Some ask if I do headboards for the living too. You ask if he does. He nods. But I charge more. They break things faster. He tells you his most requested item. A waiting chair. Something small, beautiful, always empty, for the hope that someone might return. He's made hundreds. He never asks who they're for. He just makes sure they don't creak when you sit in them, even if you never do. As the sun starts to lower, the carpenter dusts off his hands and looks around. He points to the beams above, each one named after a person who told me their dream. You squint. Faint names are etched into the wood. Some are full names, some just initials. One beam simply reads, "Yes." You ask if he ever runs out of space. He says, "Only when people stop dreaming." Then adds, "Hasn't happened yet." Before you leave, he hands you a sliver of wood. Smooth. Smells faintly of clove and salt. "For your pocket," he says, "if you ever feel haunted by something gentle." You tuck it away. As you step out, you feel the air shift. Behind you, the carpenter hums softly a tune that seems older than the shop, older than the city, older than memory, and maybe, just maybe, someone else is listening too. You smell him before you see him. Overripe mango, clove oil, a trace of seawater, and something older. You follow your nose around a crooked corner where the stone path curves like a question mark, and there he is, seated beneath a faded red umbrella patched with old fabric and hope, surrounded by wooden crates overflowing with mangoes in various states of ripeness. The man looks ancient and upright, like a palm tree with opinions. His beard is streaked with gray, his robe stained the color of turmeric and dust. You approach. He gestures to a stool with the solemnity of a scholar offering a rare book. You sit. "Pick one," he says. You reach for the nearest mango. "Number." "That one's for a regretful sailor." You point to another. "Spoken for. Widow on Thursday mornings." You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "They remember me. I return the favor." You pose. "What exactly do you sell?" He leans in, lowers his voice. "Memory fruit. Each mango," he explains, "is tied to someone's memory. A love letter, a betrayal, a promise made under rain that never returned. The mangoes don't contain the memories, not exactly. But if you eat the right one, the memory finds you anyway." You ask how he keeps track. He taps his head. "Too full," he says. "Sometimes I forget my own name, but I can tell you where the mango from Mombasa that smells like regret is." He reaches into a basket and pulls out a small, wrinkled one. Sniffs it. Smiles. "Yep, still bitter." You ask if the memories ever get confused. He nods solemnly. "One time, I sold a mango to a tourist who wanted a taste of childhood joy." He sighs. "Poor man cried for 3 hours and then confessed to a crime from 1973. You gape. He adds, "It was a small crime. He stole a duck." You don't ask for details. You want to. You don't. People pass by and greet him. Some smile. Some nod. Some avert their eyes. You notice he calls everyone by name, or rather, by the name of a mango they once bought. "That's Miss Early Season. There goes Mr. Three Seeds. Ah, lady with the fork. Still avoiding passion fruit, I see." No one corrects him. You watch him sort his fruit, not by ripeness, not by size, but by feeling. He holds each mango in both hands, closes his eyes, and hums a deep, low sound, like an old cello being tuned by wind. Then places the mango exactly where it belongs. You ask if he ever eats them himself. He chuckles, only when I want to remember something painful with sweetness. Then, quietly, like my mother's hands, or the way Zanzibar smelled in August, before the wrong boats came, he offers you a slice. You hesitate. He grins. It's a safe one. Just a memory of laughter from someone who used to teach children to fish using string and lies. You bite. It's warm, not in temperature, but in tone. You feel your shoulders ease. You can almost hear a boy's voice saying, "Now pretend the fish has already agreed." You laugh. It doesn't feel like your memory, but it feels like it's yours now. A teenage girl approaches. She says nothing, just lifts 2 fingers. He hands her a green mango without a word. She leaves. You ask what that was. He sighs. First heartbreak. She's still in denial, but the fruit will ripen slowly. So will the truth. You ask where he gets them. He lists. A friend with a mango grove. A cousin with a 6th sense. A tree that only grows near graves. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles. Don't worry. That one's just for ghosts. They pay in wind. A man in a hurry rushes by, snatches a mango, tosses a coin. The seller catches the fruit before it hits the ground, shakes his head. That one was not his. He gently places it aside. Let's hope he only remembers a birthday, not the rest of it. As the sun lowers, he covers his crates with cloth dyed from turmeric and rainwater. The air smells thick with fruit and fable. You thank him. He offers you one last mango. It hasn't chosen anyone yet, he says, but it likes you. You accept it. It's smooth, cool, heavy in a comforting way. You tuck it into your bag. He winks. Eat it when you're ready to remember something you didn't know you forgot. As you walk away, the mango in your bag feels like it's humming, very softly. A memory, perhaps, waiting for a mouth, waiting for a moment, waiting for you. It turns up in your pocket without permission. Not there in the morning, but by afternoon, when you reach for your handkerchief, it's sitting beside your fingers like it's been waiting all along. A coin, heavy for its size, worn smooth on one side, and the other, no face, no crest, no number, just a pattern, a spiraling knot of waves, and what might be fire or might be wind etched so faintly it seems to disappear if you stare too long. You ask around. The answers are inconsistent. The spice vendor says it's a lucky piece for those who forget where they came from. The fisherman shrugs. Bad luck. Bought my first broken net with one of those. A passing child peers at it, then says, "Oh, that's a sea coin. It only works if you lie to it," then runs off before you can ask what that means. You bring it to an old shopkeeper whose shelves are layered with dust and rumor. She peers at the coin, spits twice over her shoulder, offers you a piece of ginger, then tells you this: that coin doesn't belong anywhere. It's older than the streets, too young for the ruins. Some say it was minted by a merchant who wanted to trade with ghosts. Others say it's not a coin at all, just a flattened truth someone dropped. Either way, it always shows up when someone's about to make a deal they'll regret. You ask if she wants it. She laughs. "Darling, I already did." You check your pocket later. It's still there. Of course it is. You begin to notice odd things. Strangers nod at you as if they recognize your choice. Street musicians play songs you almost remember. Cats stare too long. And once, just once, a wind carries the faint scent of burning cinnamon and old salt as you pass a certain doorway. You reach for the coin. It's warm. You bring it to a coin collector, retired, meticulous, perpetually covered in ink smudges. He studies it under a glass, mutters, sighs. pulls out 3 books and an old sea chart. It's impossible, he says. It shouldn't exist. He shows you why. The material? Not copper, not silver, not gold, but something in between. The design? A known pattern, but only half of one, found elsewhere on a ceremonial bowl from Java, a sailor's tattoo from Yemen, and a torn manuscript in broken Swahili. It tells you, this coin belongs to a place that never made maps. Or maybe, a place the maps forgot. He tries to buy it from you. You decline. He respects that. Good. It probably wouldn't have liked me anyway. Someone else, a quiet woman at the harbor with a scar shaped like a question mark, tells you her grandmother used to collect those. Only ever had one at a time. I asked her what it was for. The woman says, she told me, to remind you the world has more than one truth. You ask where the grandmother is now. She looks toward the sea, where all coins eventually return. You start using the coin differently. Not to spend, not to keep, but to test choices. You flip it when you're unsure. Always catches a bit more wind than expected. Always lands silently. You start dreaming of places with no borders, of markets where nothing costs anything unless you name it out loud, of doors that open with a spin, of maps with edges burned off. One day, you leave it on a stone wall while you buy roasted peanuts. When you return, it's gone. You don't panic. You check your other pocket. There it is, warm again. You whisper, "You little liar." The coin doesn't reply, but it feels smug. Eventually, someone tells you, there's only ever been one of that coin. It just chooses pockets. You ask how it decides. They shrug. Maybe it listens for silence, or people trying too hard to be certain. You consider throwing it into the sea. You don't. Instead, you carve a tiny box for it, lined with cloth from your least favorite shirt, tied shut with a shoelace from a sandal you lost its pair to. You whisper, "This is home, for now." The coin settles, just slightly. And every now and then, you open the box, just to see if it's still there. It always is, until it isn't, but if that day ever comes, you'll smile. Because now, you know how to find it again. You just have to forget where it went. The shop is small, sandwiched between a lantern cellar and a doorway that might be cursed. Its sign swings lazily in the breeze. Barber. Advice also available. You step inside. The air smells of coconut oil, cinnamon bark, and faint regret. 3 chairs, 1 mirror, and not a single pair of scissors in sight. A man sits at the back, polishing a shaving bowl with an old cloth and ancient patience. He looks up, smiles. "Haircut?" he asks. You say yes. He nods, but makes no move to cut anything. You sit. He wraps a cloth around your shoulders, even though your hair doesn't seem to matter much to him. Then he begins talking. Not loudly, not directly, just talking. Stories, questions, memories. None of them quite his. None of them quite yours. And yet, every word seems tailored to your posture. The way your shoulders slumped a bit when you sat down. The way you keep your hands in your lap like you're not sure what they're guilty of. It tells you, in this chair sat a man who swore he could hear ants whispering regrets. In that one, a woman who memorized wins instead of names. There, a child who once stole a priest's hat and claimed divine protection. You ask what happened to them. He shrugs. They left lighter. Isn't that the point? You look at the walls. There are no mirrors. Just one small, cloudy, hung too high to be useful. He sees you looking. People don't come here to see themselves, he says. They come here to stop carrying what they thought they were. At some point, he starts combing your hair. Not styling, not untangling. Just combing slow, meditative strokes, like someone smoothing a thought before sending it out into the world. You feel your thoughts dozing off, one by one. He hums something tuneless, but ancient. You ask why there are no scissors. He says, hair remembers things. If you cut too much at once, the memories scream. You laugh, softly. He smiles, not disagreeing. A breeze passes through the shop, stirs a curtain, rattles a bowl. He pauses. Someone passed by who used to believe in their own shadow, he says, almost to himself, then returns to the combing. Eventually, he stops. Not because your hair is done, it was never really begun, but because you're ready. You feel different, lighter, not in the head, in the heart. He unwraps the cloth, dusts off your shoulders with a small brush that smells faintly of sandalwood and surprise. Leave a coin if you like, he says. You ask how much. He replies, whatever it cost you to sit down. You leave a folded note instead. It simply says, I remember less now. Thank you. As you step outside, the world feels newly sharpened. Colors have edges. Sounds know their place. Even your own thoughts walk more politely behind you. You glance back. The sign is swinging again. Only now it says, Barber, grief trimmed daily. You smile and keep walking. Not because you've changed, but because, somehow, you're no longer waiting for someone to tell you how. The rumor arrives before the sound. You hear it whispered in the market between stalls of dried fish and coconut rope. It played once, only once, but no one's forgotten it. You ask what it is. An old man with fingers stained in turmeric replies, a song. Not a tune, a full song. Played just once, long ago, and never again. You ask if anyone recorded it. He laughs until he coughs. No need. People still hum it in their sleep. The trail leads you to a rooftop cafe. There's no menu, only sugarcane tea and salted almonds. The owner has a left ear that twitches. When he lies a fact, he reveals cheerfully. You ask about the song. His twitch stays still. He leans in and tells you the story. It was a coastal wedding, somewhere between the monsoon's goodbye and the mango harvest's hello. The bride was a weaver's daughter. The groom, a trader of silence. You ask what that means. He says, exactly. Instead of gold or goats or dowry, the groom brought a musician. Just one. A man with a handmade instrument, part drum, part string, part wind, all mystery. No one had ever seen it before, or since. He played for 13 minutes, and that was it. No one remembered the lyrics. There were none. No one remembered the beat. It changed every 30 seconds. No one remembered the melody, because it didn't have one, or maybe it had all of them. But everyone remembered how they felt. A widow remembered her lost husband's scent. A child understood why their mother cried at the moon. A priest forgot which god he served and didn't mind. One woman tasted a fruit that no longer exists. One man saw colors in a language he never learned. And someone no one knows who kissed the air and swore it kissed back. The next day, the musician was gone. So was his instrument. The couple stayed married, had children, named the first one after a note they couldn't hum. You sip your tea. It tastes slightly like cardamom and slightly like déjà vu. The cafe owner tells you people still gather in that wedding courtyard every year on the same day. No one plays music. But if you listen closely, especially around sunset, the air seems to remember. You ask if he's been. He nods. Every year, never miss it. You ask what he hears. He leans back. Depends on what I need. You leave the cafe with a handful of salted almonds and a strange heaviness in your chest. That night, you dream of string and drum and wind, and wake up humming something you're sure doesn't exist. You hum it again. The cat on your windowsill purrs like it remembers. The wind has quieted. The last doe has slipped into the dark, and the stories, the loud, the lost, the whispered, have folded themselves back into the walls, the waves, and the worn-out footprints that stitch this coast together. You're still here, breathing slower, blinking less. not waiting for a story now, but floating inside one. You've met spice merchants who sneeze prophecies, ghost carpenters with memory in their sawdust, a mango seller who knows your past before you taste it, and coins that don't ask for countries, just curiosity. Maybe you forgot a few names. Maybe you didn't remember your own once or twice. That's all right. The Swahili coast is made of forgetting and finding, of monsoons and mango trees, of promises made to the sea and the ones whispered back when no one's listening. Tonight, you wandered through streets that changed names to match your pace. You sat in a barber's chair and left lighter than your hair ever was. You listened for music that never played twice, and somehow, you still remember the tune. Now, as your breath slows, as your eyes soften, as your thoughts become smaller boats drifting out towards sleep, let go. Let the salt and the stars tuck you in. You don't need to remember where you are, only that you are here. And you're welcome back, any night, with just a whisper of sand on your pillow. Sweet dreams, traveler of stories. You are part of the coast now. End of script. Sweet dreams.